Alright. Welcome, everyone. Tonight, me and Max are going to read Penpal. This is the original version on Reddit that was uploaded to No Sleep by 1,000 Vultures. The author's name, though, is Dathan Auerbach. I have bought and read the book, but this is Max's first time ever going into, a very well-known creepypasta. The only other one that he really knows is Jeff the Killer.
Don't forget Slender Man.
Well, yes, I was gonna say, and you know about the Rake, right? And
Yeah, and
yeah,
the Russian Sleep Project, all the
yeah,
really old ones.
Sleep Experiment. But yeah, you get it. But yeah, so we're going to be going through the original Reddit, and hope everyone enjoys this. I am a massive fan of this story. I love this story. I read it in middle school, and it's still one of my favorites. I hope Max enjoys it, and I hope everyone that watches this enjoys the video. So, are you ready to get into it, Max?
Sure.
Alright, so we're starting out with the story, Footsteps. Alright, let's see. I'm gonna just go through this real quick. So, there isn't many voices, so if you'd want to voice the mom in this part, I'll let you know when. This is so long, so I apologize for that. I've never had to tell this story with enough detail to actually explain it all the way, but it is true, and it happened when I was about 6 years old. In a quiet room, if you press your ear against a pillow, you can hear your heartbeat. As a kid, the muffled, rhythmic beats sounded like soft footsteps on a carpeted floor. So as a kid, almost every night, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I would hear these footsteps and I would be ripped back to consciousness, terrified. For my entire childhood, I lived with my mother in a fairly nice neighborhood that was in a transitional phase. People of lower economic means were gradually moving in, and my mother and I were two of these people. We lived in the kind of house you see being transported in two pieces on the interstate, but my mom took good care of it. There were a lot of woods surrounding the neighborhood that I would play in and explore during the day, but at night, as things often do as a kid, they took a more sinister feeling. This, coupled with the fact, due to the nature of our house, there was a fairly large crawl space underneath. Filled my mind with imaginary monsters and inescapable scenarios which would consume my thoughts when I was awoken by the footsteps. I told my mom about the footsteps, and she said that I was imagining things. I persisted enough that she blasted my ears with water from a turkey baster once just to placate me. Since I thought, did you ever have that happen to you? Did you ever get your water blasted?
I don't know what +8 means.
Well, just to satiate, to, I don't know, to indulge him on his,
I guess not.
Well, it has nothing to do with placate, but I'm saying, have you ever gotten turkey blasted in the ear with water?
No.
Shit sucks. It's not fun. I had to do it once. It was awful. Since I thought that would help. Of course it didn't. Despite all the creepiness and footsteps, the only weird thing that ever happened was that, and every now and then I would wake up on the bottom bunk despite having gone to sleep on the top. But this wasn't really weird since I'd sometimes get up to piss or get something to drink and could remember just going back to sleep, or couldn't remember just going back to sleep on the bottom bunk. I am an only child, so it didn't matter. This would happen once or twice a week, but waking up on the bottom bunk wasn't too terrifying. But one night, I didn't wake up on the bottom bunk.
Why do you have a bunk bed if you're an only child?
I mean, I think at any point as a kid, I'm pretty sure I wanted a bunk bed. So, you don't know much, obviously, right now, but, she's a single mom, so I think it's just, the single mom kind of indulging the kid, being here you go, whatever you want, type of deal.
Gotcha.
That's what I think so.
My little brother is only 2 years younger than me, so I always shared a room with him, and we had bunk beds, but for a reason.
Fair enough. I mean, I remember always wanting a bunk bed just so I could be if my friends come over, they could sleep up there, but, I never got one, and I mean, I'm glad I did those things. I mean, I feel like any one that I've ever slept in, it always, had terrible support. Alright. I had heard the footsteps, but was too far gone to be woken up by them. When I was awoken, it wasn't far from the sounds of the footsteps or a nightmare, but because I was cold. Really cold. When I opened my eyes, I saw stars. I was in the woods. I sat up immediately and tried to figure out what was going on. I thought I was dreaming, but that didn't seem right, though neither did me being in the woods. There was a deflated pool float right in front of me, one of those shaped like a shark. This only added to the surreal feeling, but after a while it seemed like I wasn't going to wake up because I wasn't asleep. I stood up to orient myself, but I didn't recognize these woods. I played in these woods by my house all the time, so I knew them really well, but if these weren't the same woods, then how could I get out? I took a step and felt a shooting pain in my foot, which knocked me back to where I had just been laying. I had stepped on a thorn. By the light of the moon, I could see that they were everywhere. I looked at my other foot, but it was fine, and as a matter of fact, so was the rest of me. I didn't even have another scratch on me, and I wasn't even that dirty. I cried for a little bit, and then stood back up. I mean, for a 6-year-old, I feel like I would have been crying for a while, but that's just me. I didn't know which way to go, so I picked a direction. I resisted the urge to call out since I wasn't sure I wanted to be found by who or what might be out there. I walked for what seemed like hours. I tried to walk in a straight line, and tried to course correct when I had to take any detours. But I was a kid, and I was afraid. There weren't any howls or screams, and only once did I hear any noise that scared me. It sounded like a crying baby. I think now that it was just a cat, but I had panicked. I ran veering in different directions to avoid big thickets of bushes, thickets of bushes and collapsed trees. And I was paying close attention to where I stepped because by that point my feet were in pretty bad shape. I paid too much attention to where I was stepping and not enough to where those steps were leading because not long after hearing the cry, I saw something that filled me with a kind of despair I haven't experienced since. It was the pool float. I was only 10 feet away from where I had woken up. This wasn't magic or some supernatural space bending. I was lost. Up until that moment, I thought more about getting out of the woods than how I got in, but being back at the beginning caused my mind to swim. I wasn't even sure that these were my woods. I'd only been hoping that they were. Had I run in a huge circle around that spot, or did I get turned around and start making my way back? How was I going to get out? At the time I thought the North Star was just the brightest star, and so I looked and found the brightest one and followed it. Eventually things started to look more familiar, and then I saw the ditch. A dirt ditch my friends and I would have dirt clod wars in. Did you ever have dirt wars? I had acorn wars.
No, we just kind of punched each other in the face.
Fair. Me and my friends, we would just pick up like acorns that fell off trees and just get a shit ton of them, and then we fucking pelt each other with them. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, me and my friends would do this thing called 10 seconds, where we would get surrounded by the rest of our friends while two of us just beat the shit out of each other for 10 seconds.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
It was fun.
Wonder why he liked Jeff the Killer so much. I knew I had made it out.
I didn't have bullies. I always beat up people.
Fair enough. I knew I had made it out. By that point, I was walking really slowly because my feet hurt so much, but I was so happy to be close to home that I broke into a light jog. When I actually saw the roof of my house over a neighboring lower set of houses, I let out a light sob and ran faster. I just wanted to be home. I had already decided that I wouldn't stay or say anything because I had no idea what I could possibly even say. I wouldn't get back in the house somehow, I would get back in the house somehow, clean up, and get in bed. My heart sunk as I rounded the corner and my house came into full view. Every light in the house was on. Alright, you're getting ready to voice. I knew my mom was up. Too late. And I knew I would have to explain, or try to explain, where I had been. And I couldn't even figure out where to start. My run became a jog, which became a walk. I saw their silhouette through the blinds, and although I was worried about how to explain things to her, that didn't matter to me at this point. I walked up a couple steps to the porch and put my hand on the doorknob and turned. Right before I opened, two arms wrapped around me and pulled me back. I screamed as loud as I could. "Mom, help me! Please, Mom!" The feeling of being so close to being safe and then physically being pulled away from it filled me with a kind of dread, even after all these years, indescribable. The door I had been torn away from opened and a flash of hope shot through my heart, but it wasn't my mom. It was a man, and he was enormous. I thrashed around and kicked it at the shins of the person holding me, while also trying to get away from the person who had just come out of my house. I was scared, but I was furious. "Let me go. Where is she? Where's my mom? What'd you do to her?" As my throat stung from screaming, I was drawing in another breath. I became aware of a sound that had been present for longer than I had perceived it. Max?
Oh, honey, please calm down. I've got you. It sounded like
Sounded
my
like
mom.
The arms loosened and set me down, and as a man approaching me blocked out the porch light with his head, I noticed his clothes. He was a cop. I turned to face the voice behind me and saw that it really was my mom. Everything was okay. I began to cry. The three of us went inside.
Oh, I'm so glad you're home, sweetie. I was worried I'd never see you again.
By that point, she was crying too. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just wanted to come home. I'm sorry.
It's okay, just don't ever do that again. I'm not sure me or my shins could take it.
A little laughter broke through my sobs, and I smiled a bit. Well, I'm sorry for kicking you, but why'd you have to grab me like that?
I was just afraid that you'd run away again.
I was confused. What do you mean?
We found your note on your pillow, she said, and pointed at the piece of paper. I didn't see the other quotation mark for a second.
Oh, no, you're fine. That the police officer was sliding across the table. I picked up the note and read it. It was a running away letter. It said that I was unhappy and never wanted to see her or any of my friends ever again. The police officer exchanged a few words with my mom on the porch while I stared at the letter. I didn't remember writing a letter. I didn't remember anything about any of this. But even if I sometimes went to the bathroom at night and didn't remember, or even if I could have gone into the woods on my own, even if all that could have been true, the only thing I knew at that point was, this isn't how you spell my name. I didn't write this letter. And that is the end of the first part of Penpal. Footsteps.
Fun.
I kind of forgot the name. You like the vibe so far?
It says it at the top.
Yeah, I know. I forgot it though for somehow, even though I claim to love this story. But yeah, how'd you feel about that first one? I mean, it's an introduction, nothing too crazy.
I mean, yeah. I don't know what to say about it other than that it's an introduction.
Well, I mean, how'd you feel about the idea of waking up in the woods alone? And then, learning about this letter, like the reveal of I didn't write this letter, like, especially as a kid, how would you deal with that, you think?
Fuck. I don't know, I'm not good at this.
There's nothing to be good at. I'm just, like, as a kid, like, imagine you're 6 again, and you woke up in the woods, and then you got back all this, you look at this letter that you allegedly wrote, and you know for a fact that you didn't, but, like, how do you, begin to even try to say something like that to your parent?
I would just show them. I would feel like I was about to get like I was actually gonna get abducted, probably. And
you
tell
think
them
so?
about how the name is wrong. That's most likely what I would do. If I definitely didn't remember writing it. Like, here's the thing. He says he doesn't remember any of it. He just woke up in the woods. He's just assuming that it could have happened at that point.
Right.
But then,
well, yeah, because he's 6.
Realizes. Huh?
He's 6, so he's kind of dumb. He's, and more or less, I feel like he's kind of hoping, like, that he did this, because, he said, I didn't write this letter, but even back here, he's like, I didn't remember writing a letter, I didn't remember writing any of this, and he references going to the bathroom at night. Like, I think he wants to believe that somehow this could have happened without him realizing.
The earliest age I can remember myself being, I wouldn't be as scared as a 6-year-old.
Fair enough.
Like, I'm trying to think of myself as 6 years old, but I can't really think of it.
Yeah.
I'm old.
Yeah,
I barely remember when I was 12.
Okay, are we ready for balloons?
Yeah. So, yeah, well,
Okay.
Real quick, that's what I was talking about. Like, I can't really imagine myself in that situation because I can't imagine myself being 6 years old.
Well, yeah, but he gets older.
That's my biggest thing. Is like I'm trying to think of it, but like I said, the earliest I can think is the thing I would do is look around, find any kind of light if I could. If I couldn't find any light, I would just run in one direction.
That's what he tried though. But I mean, I'm assuming that he probably did just get turned around because like that.
Probably.
For me, if
but I wouldn't
that's what
stop
was
until
gonna
I
say.
got somewhere. Like I wouldn't be looking around for stuff I've seen before. I'd just be
Well,
running.
okay, but
like I
that
guess
was
if there's like a
that was a
very
landmark.
obvious thing, like a pool
A
float,
pool float,
maybe.
yeah.
But
I mean, that's a landmark for him, and like the fact that he ran back at that, even though he thought he's been going in a straight line. I mean, I feel like for me at least, I would be like, I'm giving up. I don't know. I don't think I was very brave as a kid. If I saw that again, I would be like, holy shit! Like, what is going on?
I just keep running, and hopefully.
Yeah.
And the thing is if I felt like I veered in one direction, I would just start trying to veer in the other direction. If I go in another circle, I would literally just keep going.
Fair enough. Okay, are we ready? So also, he addresses this sometimes because the format of No Sleep is kind of weird. The rules are really strict on how you upload stories. So in the book, it's presented slightly different. So like this first whole paragraph, it's not really part of the story. It's the guy like responding, but it plays some into it for laying it out. But I just wanted to let you know. A couple days ago, I posted a story called "Footsteps" here on No Sleep. There were a number of questions that made me curious about certain details about my childhood, and so I spoke about it with my mother. Exacerbated by my questions, she said, "Max."
Wait, this. I thought this was about the author.
Well, but he referenced his mom. Like the author is the one writing the story, but like, yeah, my bad.
Why don't you just tell them about the goddamn balloons if they're so interested?
As soon as she said that, I remembered so much about my childhood that I had forgotten. The story will provide some greater context for the previous story, which I think you should read first. Though the order isn't of vital importance, reading the story first will put you in my place more effectively since I remembered the events of Footsteps first. If you have questions or anything, feel free to ask and I'll try to answer them. Also, both stories are long, so heads up on that. I'm just hesitant to leave out any details that might be important. So yeah, a lot of this is about like memory and like how choppy it is. I mean, like how you said you can't really remember when you were 6. This is more about like trauma and stuff that he just like has been coming to him, and he's piecing it together along with like everyone on the Reddit.
Gotcha.
When I was 5 years old, I went to an elementary school that, from what I've come to understand, was really adamant about the importance of learning through activity. It was a part of a new program designed to allow children to rise at their own pace, and to facilitate this, the school encouraged teachers to come up with really inventive lesson plans. Each teacher was given the latitude to create his or own themes which would run for the duration of the grade, and the lessons in math, reading, etc. would be designed in the spirit of the theme. These themes were called groups. There was a space group, a sea group, an earth group, and the group I was in, community. That feels kind of like a pretty shit one compared to the others. I feel like I'd be kind of mad. Especially if I got kicked out of space group. In kindergarten in this country, you don't learn much except of how to tie your shoes and how to share. So most of this isn't very memorable. I only remember 2 things very clearly.
So America?
Exactly. I was the best at writing my name the right way in the balloon project, which was really the hallmark of the community group, since it was a pretty clever way to show how a community functioned at a really basic level. You've heard of this activity, or you've probably heard of this activity. I know I sure as hell haven't, until reading the story, obviously. On one Friday, I remember it being Friday because I was excited about the project and it being the end of the week. Toward the beginning of the year, we walked into a classroom in the morning and saw that there was a fully inflated balloon tied off with a string taped to each of our desks. Sitting on each of our desks was a marker, a pen, a piece of paper, and an envelope. The project was to write a note on the paper and put it in the envelope and attach it to the balloon, which we could draw a picture on if we wanted. Most of the kids started fighting over the balloons because they wanted different colors, but I started on my note, which I had thought a lot about. All the notes had to follow a loose structure, but we were allowed to be creative within those boundaries. My note was something like this: "Hi, you found my balloon. My name is name, and I attend redacted elementary school. You can keep the
Why
balloon,
would you
but
put
I hope
your school on a random ass letter? I'm assuming they're tying the letters to the balloons and releasing them here in a second.
Yes. No,
I never
know.
did that because it's
I know
illegal.
that's stupid. It's Okay, this is supposed to be set back in like the
illegal. It's
70s or
littering.
80s. Yeah, oh, well, yeah, well, that too. This is, like, set back, like, during the 70s or 80s. So, yes, I'm very glad you picked up on that. It is incredibly stupid, and that this is, like, the catalyst for, like, everything, and it's so funny to think about. Just, like, incompetent teachers were the reason of all this happening. But anyway, I attend redacted elementary school. You can... just, here's where I am. Might as well give him his fucking address. You can keep the balloon,
Yeah.
but I hope you write me back. I like Mighty Max, exploring, building forts, swimming, and friends. What do you like?
I know what Mighty
Write me back
Max
soon.
is.
Wow, that's a reference. I get that. Here's $1 for the mail. On the dollar, I wrote for stamps right across the front, which my mom said was unnecessary, but I thought it was genius, so I did it. See, I like
Yeah,
it,
Mighty
Steve.
Max was this little plastic thing where this little dude, Max, would be in it, and then you would open it and like build a little scene, and
I
you
remember
would place
that.
him in. It would have all these little pieces and stuff, but it got discontinued because choking hazards.
Shocking. The teacher took a Polaroid of each of us with our balloons and had us put them in the envelope along with our letter. Fucking crazy, right?
That
So,
too? What? Bro, if I learned that teachers were sending photos of my children into orbit to just land
Okay.
somewhere, I'm killing the teacher.
This is the hardest part to, like, suspend your disbelief in. Like, everything else is pretty realistic, but this part is definitely the hardest to, like, be like, why the fuck was it?
Like, this
how
was
did
a
this get
fucking
approved?
elementary school in the sticks. These teachers got their fucking degree from a cereal box.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you... yeah. Anyway, so, picture of the kid with the elementary school they go to and their name.
That sounds like all three things that the fucking murderer for Chris Griffin got
Max.
from Peter. When he was like, "Oh, here's a picture of my son," and he kind of ruined it by putting his school schedule and address on the back.
Max, look, they have it. They saved it right here. They had a contingency. They also included another letter that I assume explained the nature of the project and sincere appreciation for anyone's participation in writing back and sending photos of their city or neighborhood. That's them saving their asses, allegedly. Is that they also put a note in there and being like, hey, like, we're monitoring these, just so you know. But, like...
How?
Also, exactly.
That doesn't
Well,
make-
if they send the notes in, like, it'll go through the school before the kids can read them. But
Gotcha.
their city or neighborhood, like they're imagining these balloons went to like a different fucking city.
Yeah. So these teachers don't even know how balloons work.
No, this is
Like, here's the
bad
thing.
school.
Most likely, depending on how big the balloon is, it's going to end up in the ocean. Depending, like, if you're not, unless you're like in Central America,
Right.
it's most likely going to end up in the ocean.
Okay. That was the whole idea, to build a sense of community without having to leave the school, and to establish safe contact with other people. It seemed like such a fun idea.
You might as well sign the kids up for Tinder! Like, what the fuck?
Over the next couple of weeks, the letters started to roll in. Most came with the pictures of different landmarks, and each time a letter would come in, the teacher would pin the picture on a big wall map we had put up showing where the letter had come from and how far the balloon had traveled. It was a really smart idea because we actually looked forward to coming to school to see if we had gotten our letter. For the duration of the year, we had... Also, hold on. Looking forward to coming to school, you're a fucking kindergartner, you just said it. Like, you literally just, like, worried about tying your shoes and hanging out. Fuck you. For the duration of the year, we had one day a week where we could write back to our Penpal or another student's Penpal, in case our letter hadn't come in yet. Mine was one of the last to arrive. When I came into the classroom, I looked at my desk, and once again, I didn't see any letter waiting for me. But as I sat down, the teacher approached me and handed me an envelope. I must have looked so excited, because as I was about to open it, she put her hand on mine to stop me and said, "Please don't be upset." I didn't understand what she meant. Why would I be upset now that my letter had come in? Initially, I was mystified that she would even know what was in the envelope. But now I realize that, of course, the teachers had screened the contents to make sure there was nothing obscene. But all the same, how could I be disappointed?
Just
When I
a
opened the
Polaroid
envelope,
of
I
a dick
understood.
pic in your letter.
I was gonna say, what do you think it is? But There was no letter. The only thing in the envelope was a Polaroid. You might be right. but I couldn't really make out what it was. It looked like a patch of desert. You really could be right. But it was too blurry to decipher. It appeared as if the camera had been moved while the picture was being taken. There was no return address, so I couldn't even write back if I wanted to. I was crushed. The school year had pressed on, and the letters had stopped coming for nearly all of the other students. After you can only continue a written correspondence with a kindergartner for so long. I would have anyone that did checked. Everyone, including myself,
For so long, it shouldn't happen at all.
Including myself, had lost interest in the letters almost completely. Then I got another envelope. My excitement was rejuvenated, and I reveled in the fact that I was still getting a letter when most of the other pen pals had abandoned their involvement. It made sense that I had received another delivery. There had been nothing but a blurry picture in the first one, so this was probably to make up for that. But again, there was no letter, just another picture. This one was more distinguishable, but I still didn't understand it. The photograph was angled way up, catching the corner of a building, and the rest of the image was distorted by a lens flare from the sun. Because the balloons didn't travel very far.
There's a movie called Ninja Assassin, and how they would like mark who they're hunting is you would get a letter with black sand in it. That's what this sounds like.
Yeah, it's
how you
actually,
know you're being hunted.
It's a prequel for the Ninja Turtles and the Foot Clan's hunting them, Max. Because the balloons didn't travel.
This kid is Master Splinter, who turns into a rat later on in life.
Exactly. His mom dies for character development.
Spoilers.
It's not a spoiler, unless it is. But you wouldn't like to know, would you? Because the balloons didn't travel very far, and because they were all launched on the same day, the board became a bit cluttered, so the policy for the students still exchanging letters became that they could take the photographs home. My best friend Josh had the second highest number of pictures taken home by the end of the year. His pen pal was really cooperative and sent him pictures from all around the neighboring city. Josh took home, I think, 4 pictures. I took home nearly 50. The envelopes were all opened by the teacher, but after a while, I stopped.
How is that not suspicious?
Okay, yeah,
you
right.
Have 50
Incredibly.
50 individual Polaroids being sent to a kindergartner.
50 blurry, like, indistinguishable Polaroids of, like, houses and just random areas of the city.
That sounds like serial killer shit.
Oh, man. I love it. The envelopes were all opened by the teacher, but after a while I stopped even looking at the pictures. However, I saved them in one of my drawers that housed my collection of rocks, baseball cards, comic books, cards, marble metal cards, for those who might remember, and little miniature baseball batting helmets that I'd get out of vending machines at Winn-Dixie after t-ball games. With the school year over, my attention turned to other things. My mom had gotten me a small snow cone machine for Christmas that year, and Josh had really coveted it. So much so that his parents bought him a slightly nicer one for his birthday, which was toward the end of the school year. That summer we had the idea that we would set up a snow cone stand to make money. We thought we'd make a fortune selling snow cones at $1. Josh lived in a different neighborhood, but we eventually decided that my neighborhood would be better because there were a lot of people who cared for their lawns. The yards in my neighborhood were slightly bigger. We did this for 5 weekends in a row until my mom told us that we had to stop, and I've only recently come to understand why she did that. So, are you down to voice Josh? I'll let you know when his lines are up.
Sure.
Okay.
I guess I can be Josh.
Alright, you gotta be Josh. I'm just gonna call the protagonist Nathan instead of Dathan. I'll call him Nathan.
What is it?
The author of the story, his name is Dathan Oberrott, or something like that. I don't know how you pronounce it, but...
Gotcha.
But I'll call him Nathan. Okay. On the 5th weekend... Josh and Nate. On the 5th weekend, Josh and I were counting our money. Because we both had a machine, we each had a separate stack of money that we put together into one stack, and we split it evenly. We made a total of $16 that day, and as Josh paid out my $5...
to me.
Come on, man, they're kids. Let them enjoy it. Josh paid out my $5. A feeling of profound surprise consumed me. The dollar said, "For stamps." Josh noticed my shock. On the dollar, it was written "for stamps."
For stamps. Okay.
Yeah. Josh noticed my shock, and as if he had miscounted, I told him about the dollar that he said, "That's so cool, man." As I thought about it, I came to agree. The idea that the dollar had made it right back to me after changing so many hands floored me. I rushed inside to tell my mom, but my excitement, coupled with her being distracted by a phone call, made my story incomprehensible, and she responded simply by saying, "Oh wow, that's neat." Oh, sorry, you want to voice it? You want to give her the proper?
Nah, you already said it.
Frustrated, I ran back outside and told Josh I had something to show him. Back in my room, I opened the drawer and took out a stack of envelopes and showed him some of the pictures. I started with the first picture, and we went through about 10 before Josh lost interest and asked if I wanted to go play in the ditch, a dirt ditch down the street from my house, before his mom came to pick him up, so that's what we did. We had a dirt war for a while, but it was interrupted several times by rustling in the woods around us. There were raccoons and stray cats that lived there. This was making a little too much noise, and we traded guesses as to what it was in attempts to scare each other. My last guess is that it was a mummy, but in the end, Josh kept insisting it was a robot because of the sounds that we heard. Before we left, he got a little serious.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It will. Before we left, he got a little serious and looked me right in the eyes and said, "You heard it, didn't you? It sounded like a robot. You heard it too, right?" I had heard it, and since it sounded mechanical, I agree that it was probably a robot. It's only now that I understand what we heard.
I thought I was listening, Josh.
You heard? Oh shit, my bad. I didn't even realize that was his line. Okay, good catch. When we got back, Josh's mom was waiting for him at the kitchen table with my mom. Josh told him about the robot. Our moms laughed and Josh went home. My mom and I ate dinner and then I went to bed. I didn't even stay in bed for long before I crept out and decided that due to the day's events, I would revisit the envelope since now the whole affair seemed much more interesting. I took the first envelope and set it on the floor and set the blurry desert Polaroid on top. I laid the second envelope right next to it and placed the oddly angled Polaroid of a building on the top corner on this and did with each picture until they formed a grid that was about 5 by 10. I was always taught to be careful with things that I was collecting, even if I wasn't sure they were valuable. I noticed that the pictures gradually became more decipherable. There was a tree with a bird on it, a speed limit sign, a power line, a group of people walking into some building, and then I saw something that vexed me so powerfully that I can now, as I write this, distinctly remember feeling dizzy and capable of only a single repeating thought. Why am I in this picture? In this photograph of the crowd of people entering the building, I saw myself holding hands with my mother in the very back of the crowd of people. We were at the very edge of the photo, but it was undeniably us. And as my eyes swam over the sea of Polaroids, I became increasingly anxious. It was a really odd feeling. It wasn't fear, it was the feeling you get when you are in trouble. I'm not sure why I was flooded with that feeling, but there I sat floundering in the distinct sense that I had done something wrong. And this feeling only intensified as I looked at the rest of the photos after the one that had so powerfully struck me. I was in every photo.
How'd you just not notice that?
I mean, he said that he stopped looking at them. He had gotten 50 and he just quit looking at them because he wasn't interested. None of them were close shots. None of them were only of me, but I was in every single one of them. Off to the side, in the back, bottom of the frame. That's also why. Some of them only had the tiniest part of my face captured at the very edge of the photo, but nevertheless, I was there. I was always there. I didn't know what to do. Your mind works in a funny way as a kid, but there was a large part of me that was afraid of getting into trouble simply for still being up. Since I already had the looming feeling of having done something wrong, I decided I would wait until tomorrow. The next day my mom was off work and spent most of the morning cleaning up around the house. I watched cartoons and waited until I thought it was a good time to show her the Polaroids. When she went out to get the mail, I grabbed a couple of pictures and put them on the table in front of me as I sat waiting for her to come back in. When she returned, she was already opening the mail and threw some junk mail into the trash can, and I said, "Mom, can you come here for a second? I have these pictures."
Just give me a minute, honey. I need to mark these on the calendar.
After a minute or two, she came and stood behind me and asked me what I needed. I could hear her shuffling with the mail behind me, but I just looked at the Polaroids and told her about them. As I explained more and pointed at the pictures, her frequent
uh-huhs and okays
decreased, and she was suddenly completely quiet and only making a little noise with the mail. The next noise I heard from her sounded as if she was trying to catch her breath in a room that had no air left in it.
Damn.
Start panicking, Max. At
No,
the
it
last,
doesn't say, I don't see it. It doesn't say to.
at last, her struggling gasps were conquered, and she simply dropped the remaining mail on the table and ran to the kitchen to get the phone. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know about these. Don't be mad at me. With the phone pressed to her ear, she was walking/running back and forth and shouting into it. I nervously fiddled with with the mail sitting next to the Polaroids. The top envelope had something sticking out that I thoughtlessly and anxiously pulled out until it came out. It was another Polaroid. Confused, I had thought somehow one of my Polaroids had slipped into the stack when she threw the mail down. When I turned it over and realized I had not seen this one before. To my dismay, it was me. But this one was a much closer shot. I was surrounded by trees and was smiling, but it wasn't just me. I noticed Josh was there too. This was us from yesterday. I started yelling for my mom, who was still screaming into the phone.
Pedophile in the woods, not a robot. Even scarier.
Do you know what they were saying though about the robot sounds? That was the sound of the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh shit. Knocking everything over on my desk. Let's go. I started yelling for my mom, who was still screaming on the phone. I repeatedly yelled for her until she finally responded with, "What?" Oh, here, hit it. Yell.
What?
There we go. And I could only think to ask, who are you calling?
I'm talking with the police, honey.
But why? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do anything. She answered me with the response that I never understood until I was forced to revisit these events from the earliest years of my life. She grabbed the envelope off the table and the picture of Josh, and I spun and slid, landing next to the other Polaroids in front of me. She held the envelope up to my eyes, but I could only look at her and watch as all the colors began draining out of her face. With tears welling up in her eyes, she said that she had to call the police because there was no postmark.
I don't know what's a postmark.
That means that was personally just put at their house. Like, it wasn't delivered.
Oh.
There was no address. Like, it was just dropped off
Gotcha.
in their mail. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how you feeling so far? Besides the absolutely awful school in the balloons program.
That's the stupidest thing I have ever heard.
It absolutely is. It is hands down my favorite part of it. Just
my thing
is,
so this kid's balloon landed somewhere, and some dude is like, you know what? I'm gonna stalk him.
Absolutely. Okay, this kid looks pretty cool. All right, are we ready for boxes? Yeah. Yeah. Are we ready for boxes?
Sure.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Okay. If you haven't read Footsteps or Balloons, please do not so before reading what's below so you'll understand. For those of you who have read my other stories and asked if there was more and received cryptic answers from me, I wanted to apologize for being dishonest. I said several times in the comments that nothing really happened after Footsteps, but that wasn't true. The events of the following story weren't locked away in the recesses of my mind. I've always remembered them. It wasn't until I remembered balloons and spoke with my mother about the following events that I realized how intertwined the story was with everything else. But I originally hadn't planned on sharing this anyway. My desire to withhold this memory was due mostly to the fact that I don't think I showed good judgment in it. I also wanted to consent from another person to tell it so as not to misrepresent what transpired. I didn't expect there to be a lot of interest in my other stories, so I never thought I'd get pressed for more details, and I would have been happy to keep this to myself for the rest of my life. I haven't been able to reach the other party, but I would feel disingenuous withholding the story from those who wanted more information now that I've spoken with my mother in another connecting line that has been drawn. I gotta burp. There we go. What follows is an accurate recollection as I can manage. I apologize for the length. Oh god, what you doing to me, Max? Oh, there we go. I spent the summer before my first year of elementary school learning how to climb trees. There was one particular pine tree right outside my house that seemed mostly designed, or almost designed for me. It had branches that were so low I could easily grab them without a boost, and for the first couple days after I first learned how to pull myself up, I would just sit on the lowest branch, dangling my feet. The tree was outside her back fence and was easily visible from the kitchen window, which was just above the sink. Before too long, my mother and I developed a routine where I would go play on the tree when she washed the dishes because she could easily see me while she did other things. As the summers passed, my abilities grew. and, and before too long I was climbing fairly high. As the tree got taller, its branches not only thinner, but more widely spaced. I eventually reached a point where I couldn't actually climb any higher, and so the game had to change. I began to concentrate on speed, and in the end I could reach my highest branch in 25 seconds. Pretty impressive, I guess.
How tall is the tree? Don't say that's fucking impressive.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right. We need a reference. I got too confident, man. You really didn't want him having credit for that. I didn't know how passionate you were about tree climbing.
No, I hope I got too touched.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got too confident. One afternoon, I tried to step on a branch before I had a firm grasp on the next one. I fell about 20 feet and broke my arm badly in two places. My mom was running towards me, yelling, and I remember her sounding like she was underwater. I don't remember what she said, but I do remember being surprised by just how white my bone was. Fuck. Yeah, I've never actually broke
my arm in two places. Doesn't say, like, a compound fracture or anything, but then just says, oh,
just lets you know.
It's my bone.
You're like, oh, okay, now I understand how it's broke. Cool. No, I've never broken a bone, but I do remember. So, also, we did get a slight reference. That doesn't tell us if it's the top or not, but 20 feet. So, I mean, that's a decent height, I'd say. But, I climbed a pine tree that was out in my parents' yard when I lived in Henderson all the time. And, I remember falling from that shit. I don't even remember how high up I was. I don't know how I didn't break anything, but I landed straight on my back. And it was the same thing. It sounded like everything was underwater. It was so weird.
I broke my arm playing backyard football.
I was hoping it was just going to be that punching game. I would imagine.
It hurted a lot.
I would imagine so. I was going to start kindergarten with the cast and wouldn't even have any friends to sign it. My mom must have felt terrible because the day I started school she brought me home a kitten. He was just a baby and was striped with tan and white. And as soon as she put him down and crawled into an empty case of soda that was sitting on the floor, I named him Boxes. Boxes was an only outside cat when he escaped. Or was only an outside cat when he escaped. My mom had him declawed. Terrible. So he wouldn't destroy the furniture, so as a result we did our best to keep him inside. He'd get out every now and then, and we'd find him somewhere in the backyard chasing some kind of bug or lizard, though he could hardly ever catch one because he had no front claws. He was pretty evasive, but we'd always catch him and carry him back inside. He'd scramble to look over my shoulder. I told my mom that it was because he was planning for a strategy for next time. Once inside, we'd give him some tuna fish, and he came to learn what the sound of the can opener might signal. He'd come running whenever he heard it. This conditioning came in handy later, because toward the end of our time in the house, Boxes would get out much more often and would run under the house into the crawl space where neither of us wanted to follow, because it was cramped up and probably crawling with bugs and rodents. Ingeniously, my mom thought to hook the can opener to an extension cord and out back and run it right outside to the hole that Boxes had gone through. Eventually he would emerge with his loud meows, looking excited by the sound, and then horrified at how he could run into such a cruel ruse on him. A can opener with no tuna that made no sense to Boxes. R.I.P. Boxes, bro. That's so rude. Like, just give him the fucking tuna. Last time he escaped under the house, it was actually our last day in it. My mom had put the house on the market, and we had begun packing our things. We didn't have much, and we stretched the packing out while I had thought I had already packed up all my clothes at my mom's request. My mom could tell that I was really sad about moving and wanted the transition to be smooth for me. And I guess that she thought that having my clothes in the box would reinforce the idea that we were moving, but things wouldn't change that much. When Boxes got out, as we were loading some things into the moving van, my mom cursed because she had already packed the can opener and wasn't sure where it was. I pretended to go look for it so I wouldn't have to go under the house, and my mom, probably completely aware of my little scam, moved one of the panels and crawled in. Did you ever have to crawl into the crawl space as a kid?
Yeah.
I hated that shit.
I didn't really have to, I just did.
My dad made me. He was like, I need your help under here, and bro, you don't know how long I tried to fight that. Ugh. She came out with Boxes pretty quickly and seemed pretty unnerved, which made me feel even better about getting out of it. My mom made some phone calls while I packed up a little more, and then she came into my room and told me that she had spoken to the realtor and we were going to start moving into the house that day. She said it was excellent news, but that I had thought we had more time in this house. She originally said that we weren't moving until the end of the week and it was only Tuesday. What What's more, we weren't completely finished packing, but my mom said sometimes it was easier to replace things than pack them and haul them all over the city. I didn't even get to grab the rest of my boxed clothes. I asked if I could call Josh to say bye, but she said that we would just call him from our new house. We left in the moving van. Yeah, so, love boxes. I'm biased. I have 3 cats. Max doesn't, because he sucks.
So at what point in his life is this? How old is he at this?
This is right before he's starting kindergarten.
Okay.
Wait,
before he started kindergarten?
This is actually, no. So right now, he's talking about when he moved out after he had already had boxes for a while, but it's about to go back to the start where he's about to go into kindergarten. This is just talking about, like, later on, about, like, what's going on with boxes and stuff. I mean, the story jumps around a lot in time, so
Gotcha.
just let me know if you need clarification, because it is a little funky sometimes.
I was confused as to what was happening. I thought they got the cat after everything had happened.
She got the cat for him right before kindergarten started because he broke his arm.
Okay.
So yeah. And then this is just talking about after, and yeah. I managed to stay in touch with Josh for years, which is surprising since we no longer went to the same school. Our parents weren't close friends, but they knew that we were, and so they would accommodate our desire to see one another by driving us back and forth for sleepovers. Sometimes every weekend. For Christmas one year, our parents even pooled their money and got us some really nice walkie-talkies that were advertised to work across the range that extended past the distance between our houses. They also had batteries that could last for days if the walkie-talkie was on but not used. They would only occasionally work well enough that we could talk across the city, but when we stayed over, we would use them around the house, talking in mock radio speak that we had taken from the movies, and they worked great for that. Thanks to our parents, we were still friends when we were 10. So this is around when they were 10 right now, yeah. One weekend I was staying over at Josh's, and my mom called me to say goodnight. She was still pretty watchful, even when she couldn't actually watch me. But I'd gotten used to it, and still didn't even notice, even if Josh... Holy shit. I didn't even notice it. Even if Josh did, she sounded upset. Boxes was missing. This must have been a Saturday night, because I had spent the night at Josh's the previous night, and was going to go home the next day, because we had school on Monday. Boxes had been missing since Friday afternoon. I gathered that she had not seen him since returning home after dropping me off. She must have decided to tell me he was missing because if he didn't come home before I did, then I would be devastated at not only his absence, but how she could have kept it from me. She told me not to worry. He'll come back. He always does. Oh, shit, Max, sorry. They always jump in between, like, who's at, like, speaking, or if it's, like, past tense of, like, what she had already said. Don't worry, there's gonna be more dialogue soon. Mostly Josh and Nathan. But Boxes didn't come back. 3 weekends later, I stayed at Josh's again. I was still upset about Boxes, but my mom told me that there had been many times when pets had disappeared from homes for weeks or even months, only to return on their own. She said they always knew where home was and would always try to get back. I was explaining this to Josh when a thought hit me so hard that I interrupted my own sentence to say it aloud. What if Boxes thought of the wrong home? Josh was confused.
What? He lives with you. He knows where his home is.
But he grew up somewhere else, Josh. He was raised in my old house a couple neighborhoods away. Maybe he still thinks of that place as home like I do.
Oh, I get it. Well, that'd be great. We'll tell my dad tomorrow and he'll take us over there so we can look.
No, he won't, man. My mom said that we couldn't ever go back to that place because of the new owners wouldn't want to be bothered. She said that she told your mom and dad the same thing. Josh persisted.
Okay, then we'll just go out exploring tomorrow and make our way to your old house.
No, if we get spotted, your dad will find out, and then so will my mom. We have to go there ourselves. We have to go there tonight. Brave-ass 10-year-olds. That's all I can say.
I mean,
were you like... I feel like I would have been too scared of my parents, especially at age 10, to do something like that.
no.
No?
Then again, I'm a middle child.
Oh, true. I was the first, so I was very much more hawk-eyed. Hawk-two-eyed. I'm gonna stop talking. It didn't take that much convincing to get Josh on board since he was usually the one to come up with ideas like this, but we had never snuck out of the house before. It actually turned out to be incredibly easy. The windows in his room opened to the backyard, and he had latched a wooden fence that wasn't locked. After those 2 minor hurdles, we slipped off into the night, flashlight and walkie-talkies in hand. There were 2 ways to get Josh's house to my old house. We could walk on the street and make all the turns, or go through the woods, which would take about half the time. It would have taken about 2 hours to walk there in the street, but I suggested that we go that way anyway. I told me it was because I didn't want to get lost. Josh refused and said that if we were seen, they might recognize him and tell his dad. He threatened to go home if we didn't just take the shortcut, and I accepted it because I didn't want to go by myself. Josh didn't know, but the last time I walked through the woods, these woods at night. So yeah, that's implying, like, ever since he woke up there, he never went back, just because of, I mean, how freaked out he was.
Yeah.
But, I mean, fair enough. The woods were less creepy with a friend and a flashlight. We were making pretty good time. I wasn't entirely sure where we were, but Josh seemed confident enough, and that bolstered my morale. We passed through a particularly thick patch of tangled trees when the strap on my walkie-talkie got caught on a branch. Josh had the flashlight, so I was struggling to get the walkie-talkie free when I heard Josh say,
"Hey man, wanna go for a swim?"
I looked over where he was shining the flashlight, though I closed my eyes as I did, because I now knew where we were. He was pointing at the pool float. This is where I had woken up in the woods all those years ago. I felt a lump in my throat and the sting of fresh tears in my eyes as I continued to struggle with the walkie. Frustrated, I yanked on it hard enough to break it free and turned and walked to Josh, who had partially laid down on the pool float in a mock sunbathing pose. As I walked toward him, I stumbled and nearly fell into a fairly large hole that was sitting in the middle of this small clearing. But I regained my balance and stopped right at its edge. It was deep. I was surprised by the size of the hole, but more surprised by the fact that I didn't remember it. I realized it must not have been there at that night because it was in the same spot where I had been awoken, but I put it out of my mind and turned to Josh. "Quit messing around, man. You saw I was stuck over there, and when you were just laying here joking around on this float," I punctuated the sentence with a kick and exposed part of the float. A screeching rose from it. Josh's smile inverted. He suddenly looked terrified and was struggling to get off the float, but he couldn't in a quick manner due to the awkward way he had been laying on it. Each time he would fall back on the float, the screeching would intensify. I wanted to help Josh, but I couldn't move myself any closer. My legs wouldn't cooperate. I hated these woods. I picked up the flashlight that he had thrown in his thrashing and shined it on the float, not knowing what to expect. Finally, Josh got off the float and rushed next to me, looking at where I was shining the light. Suddenly, there it was. It was a rat. I started laughing nervously, and we both watched the rat run into the woods, taking the screeches with it. Josh lightly punched me in the arm, the smile slowly returning to his face as we continued walking. Did you think the screeches was just like it deflating?
No, I was thinking some kind of like animal underneath it, like a raccoon.
I always thought it was deflating. I was so, like, the first couple times I ever went through this, I was so fucking confused. I was like, what does the rat have to do with anything? I don't know why I didn't understand.
Rats scream.
Yeah. We quickened our pace and made it out of the woods faster than we had thought we would, and we found ourselves back in my old neighborhood. The last time I had rounded the bend ahead, I had seen my house fully illuminated, and all the memories of what transpired came flooding back. I felt a skipping in my heart as we finally turning the corner, as we were finally turning the corner and about to face the full view of my house, remembering the last time how incandescent it was. But this time all the lights were off. From a distance I could see my old climbing tree, and as my mind traced the steps of casuality backwards, I realized that I wouldn't be back here this night if that tree hadn't grown, and I was briefly in awe of how all events were like that. As we had got closer, I could see that the lawn looked terrible. I couldn't even guess when it had been last mowed. One of the shutters had been partially broken loose and was rocking back and forth in the breeze, and all over the house just looked dirty. I was sad to see my old home in such a state of disrepair. Why would my mom care if we had bothered the new owners if they cared so little about where they lived? And then I realized there were no new owners. Also, I actually need to make sure. I'm going to just delete a game real quick, because I just realized I might not have enough space to save this whole video in here. Now I do. I'm fine. Continuing. The house was abandoned, though it looked simply forsaken. Why would my mom lie to me about our house having new people in it? But I thought that this was actually a good
stalked, thing. You little shit.
Hey, he's a stupid kid. He didn't remember. This is him
really
in retrospect.
Stupid.
Okay, this is him in retrospect finally putting all of this together. This is him like in his 20s, I think, like understanding all of this now. Like he never, because like that's what he keeps saying. He didn't like some of it was repressed trauma. Other is that like he didn't realize that some of these things were connected because he just especially childhood memories, they're fragmented. You don't think about them in like full length things. But yes, I agree, he was a stupid kid. But I thought it was actually a good thing. It would be easier to look around for boxes if we didn't have to worry about being spotted by the new family. This would make it much quicker. Josh interrupted my thoughts as we walked through the gate and up to the house itself.
Your old house sucks, dude.
Josh yelled as quietly as he could. Shut up, Josh! Even like this, it's still nicer than your house.
Hey, man.
Okay. I think boxes is probably under the house. One of us has to go under it and look, but the other should stay up next to the opening in case he comes running out.
Are you serious? There's no way I'm going under there. It's your cat. You do it.
Kyle was made for you. Look, I'll game you for it, unless you're too scared, I said, holding my fist over my turned-up palm.
Fine, but we go on shoot, not on 3. It's rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Not 1, 2, 3.
I know how to play the game, Josh. You're the one who always messes up, and it's 2 out of 3. I lost. I wiggled loose the panel that my mom would always move when she had to crawl under here for boxes. She only had to do it a couple times since the can opener trick usually worked. But when she had to do it, she hated it, especially that last time. As I looked into the darkness of the crawl space, I had a greater appreciation for why. Before we moved, she said it was actually better that boxes ran under there despite how hard it could be getting them out. It was less dangerous than him jumping over the fence and running around the neighborhood. All that was true, but I was still dreading doing this. I grabbed the flashlight and the walkie and began to crawl in. A powerful smell overtook me. It smelled like death. I turned on my walkie. Josh, are you there?
This cat's just dead under there.
This is Macho Man. Come back.
Josh, cut it out. There's something wrong down here.
What do you mean?
It stinks. It smells like something died.
Is it boxes?
I really hope not. Like, yeah, what the fuck, man? Like, fuck you. Hey, Kyle, go fuck yourself. I set down the walkie and moved the flashlight around as I crawled forward. Okay. Oh, yeah. What did I say? Kyle?
Kyle?
Oh, I'm thinking of the Baraska story. I don't know why. But you had to be inside to see around... I'll just restart it. I set down the walkie and moved the flashlight around as I crawled forward. Looking through the hole from the outside, you could still see all the way back with the right lighting, but you had to be inside to see around the support blocks that held the house up. I'd say that there was about a 45% of the area that you couldn't even see unless you were actually in the crawl space. But even inside, I discovered that I could only see directly where the flashlight was pointing. I realized that this would make scouting around the place much more difficult. As I had moved forward, the smell intensified. The fear was growing in me that boxes had come here and something had happened to him. I shined the flashlight around, but couldn't see much of anything. I wrapped my fingers around a support block to pull myself forward, and as I did that, I felt something that made my hand recoil. Fur. My heart sank, and I prepared myself emotionally for what I was about to see. I crawled slowly so I could prolong what I knew was coming, and I inched my eyes and the flashlight past the block to see what was on the other side. I staggered back in horror. Jesus Christ! Escaping my trembling mouth, it was a hideous and twisted creature badly decomposed. Its skin had rotted away on its face, so the teeth appeared to be enormous, and the smell was unbearable.
What is it? Are you okay? Is it boxes?
I reached for the walkie. No, it's not boxes.
Well, what the hell is it then?
I don't know. I shined the light on it again and looked at it with less fear in my vision. I chuckled. It's a raccoon!
Well, keep looking.
Psycho.
I'm gonna go into the house and see if he might have moved in there somehow.
Or might have made it in there somehow.
What? No, Josh, don't go in there. What if Boxes is down here and runs out?
He can't. I put the board back.
This motherfucker, dude. I looked and saw that he was telling the truth. Why'd you do that?
Oh, don't worry, man. You can move it easy. This makes more sense. If Boxes ran out and I missed, then he'd be gone. If he's down there, then grab him tight and I'll come move the board. If he's not, then you can move it yourself while I look in the house.
Makes sense.
Yeah, some of his points were good, and I doubted he'd be able to get in anyway. Okay, but be careful and don't touch anything. There's a bunch of my old clothes still in boxes in my room. You can look in there to see if he crawled in one, and make sure to bring your walkie.
Roger that, good buddy.
I realized that it would be pitch black in there. The power would have been turned off since no one was paying the bill. With any luck, he'd be able to see from the street lights that might cast some light inside. Otherwise, I'm not sure what he'd do. Before too long, I heard footsteps over my head.
Josh gonna be the person to get touched? Is the guy in the house?
Before too long, I heard footsteps right over my head and felt old dirt raining down on me. Josh, is that you?
Shh, breaker. This is Macho Man coming back from the big Tango Foxtrot. The Eagle has landed. What's your 20, Princess Jasmine? Over.
Why is it a question mark?
Yeah, I don't know. Or, well, he's saying the Eagle has landed. He said, what's your 20, like, he's saying, what's your 20? That's
okay.
The question.
Okay,
Asshole.
okay.
Macho Man, my 20 is your bathroom looking at, wait, what? My 20 is in your bathroom looking at your stashes. That's that's yours. Asshole.
Macho Man, my 20 is your bathroom looking at your stash of magazines. Looks like you've got a thing for dudes' butts. What's the report on that? Over.
I could hear him laughing without the walkie, and I started laughing too. I heard the footsteps fade away a little. He was on his way to my room. Man, it's dark in here. Oh, fuck. Go.
Man, it's dark in here.
Max?
Hey, are you sure
wait,
you
hold
had... Oh.
Talk again.
Hello?
Talk one more time. Hello?
Hello?
There we go. My headset turned off for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, anyway.
Man, it's dark in here. Hey, are you sure you had boxes of clothes in here? I don't see any.
Yeah, there should be a couple boxes in the front of the closet.
There aren't any boxes in here. Let me check to see if you maybe put the boxes in the closet before you left.
I started thinking that maybe my mom had come back and gotten the clothes and just given them away because I had outgrown a lot of them. But I remembered leaving the box... Oh my god, Cheese is locked in here. Sorry, Cheese.
That's the thing. She was literally talking about leaving shit and then selling it, and then...
Right.
Why would she come back to get it? That makes no sense. You're not
this is just a kid
you're not
rationalizing it. He's just rationalizing. Let the kid think. But I remembered leaving the boxes there. I didn't even have time to close up the last one before we left. While I was waiting for Josh to tell me what he found, I kicked out my leg, which had started falling asleep because of the position I was in, and it hit something. I looked back and saw something really strange. It was a blanket, and all around it there were bowls. I crawled a little closer to it. The blanket smelled moldy, and most of the bowls were empty, but one of them had something I still recognized in it. Cat food. It was a different kind than we gave to boxes, but I suddenly understood. My mom had set up a little place for boxes to encourage him to come here instead of running around the neighborhood. This made a lot of sense, and it seems even more like boxes would have to come back to this place. That's so cool, Mom, I thought.
I found your clothes.
Oh, cool. Where were the boxes?
Like I said, there are no boxes. Your clothes are in your closet. They're hanging up.
I felt a chill. This was impossible. I had packed all my clothes. Even though we weren't supposed to move for another 2 weeks when we left, I remembered packing them and thinking that it was stupid for me to have to get the clothes out of the box and put them back in. I had packed them, but someone had hung them back up. Why, though? Josh needed to get out of there. That can't be right, Josh. They were supposed to be in boxes. Stop messing around and just come back outside.
No joke, man. I'm looking at them. Maybe you just thought that you left them. Wow, you sure like to look at yourself, don't you?
What? What do you mean?
Your walls, man. Your walls are covered in Polaroids of yourself. There are hundreds of them. Would you hire someone to...
Silence.
I checked my walkie to see if I'd switched it off somehow. It was fine. I could hear footsteps, but couldn't tell exactly where Josh was going. I waited for Josh to finish his sentence, thinking that his finger had just slipped off the button. But he didn't continue. He seemed to be stomping around the house now. I was just about to radio him when he came back.
There's someone in the house.
His voice was hushed and broken. I could hear he was on the verge of tears. I wanted to respond, but how loud was his walkie turned up? What if the other person heard it? I said nothing and just waited and listened. What I heard were footsteps. Heavy, dragging footsteps, and then a loud thud. Oh God, Josh. He had been found. I was sure of it. This person had found him and was hurting him. I broke out in tears. He was my only friend next to boxes, and I realized, what if Josh told him I was under here? What could I possibly do? As I struggled to compose myself, I thankfully heard Josh's voice through the walkie.
He's got something, man. It's a big bag. He just threw it on the floor and... Oh god, man, the bag, I think it just moved.
I was paralyzed. I wanted to run home. I wanted to save Josh. I wanted to go for help. I wanted so many things, but I just lay there frozen. As I lay unable to move, my eyes focused on the corner of the house that was right under my room. I moved my flashlight, my breath hitched at what I saw. Animals. Dozens of them. All dead. They lay in piles all around the perimeter of the crawl space. Could boxes be among these corpses? Was what the cat food was for? Seeing this broke my shock as I knew I had to get out of there, and I scrambled to the board. I pushed on it, but it wouldn't budge. I couldn't move it because it was wedged in there, and I couldn't get my fingers around it since the wedges were outside. I was trapped. God damn you, Josh. I whispered to myself. I could feel the thunderous footsteps above me. The house was shaking. I heard Josh scream. It was matched by another scream that wasn't full of fear. As I continued pushing, I felt the board move, but I knew it wasn't me it was moving. I could hear footsteps above me, and in front of me shouting and screaming, filling the brief silences between the footsteps. I moved back and held my walkie ready to defend myself. As the board was thrown to the side, an arm shot in and grabbed for me.
Let's go, man. Now.
It was Josh, thank God. I scrambled out of the opening, holding the flashlight and the walkie. When we got to the fence, we both jumped it, but Josh's walkie fell. He reached for it and I told him to forget it. We had to move. Behind us I could hear yelling, though they weren't words, only sounds. We perhaps foolishly ran for the woods to get back to Josh's quicker and be somewhat harder to follow. The whole way through the woods, Josh kept yelling,
My picture. He took my picture.
But I knew the man already had Josh's picture from all those years ago at the ditch. I suppose Josh still thought those mechanical sounds were from a robot. We made it back to Josh's house and back into his room before his parents woke up. I asked him about the big bag and if it really moved, and he said he couldn't be sure. He kept apologizing about dropping the walkie at the house, but obviously that wasn't a big deal. We didn't go to sleep and sat peering out the window waiting for him. I went home later that day and it was about 3 a.m. already. I told my mom the basics of the story a couple days ago. She broke down and was furious about the danger I put myself in. I asked her why she made all those things up. So this is the future. This is the present. This is like him in his 20s. Okay. I asked her why she made all those things up about bothering the new owners to stop me from going. Why did she think the house was so dangerous? She became irate and hysterical, but she answered my question. She grabbed my hand and squeezed it harder than I thought her capable of and locked her eyes into mine, whispering if she was afraid to be overheard.
Because I never put any fucking blankets or bowls under the house for boxes. You weren't the only one to find them.
I felt dizzy. I understood so much now. I understood why she looked so uneasy when she had brought boxes out from under the house that last day there. She found more than spiders or a rat's nest that day. I understood why we left almost 2 weeks early. I understood why she tried to stop me from going back. She knew he made his home under ours, and she kept it from me. I left without saying another word, and didn't finish the story for her, but I want to finish it here for you. I got home from Josh's that day. I threw my stuff on the ground and it scattered everywhere. I didn't care, I just wanted to sleep. I woke up around 9 p.m. to the sound of boxes meowing. My heart leapt. He had finally come home. I was a little sick about the fact that if I had just waited a day, none of the previous night's events would have happened, and I'd have boxes anyway. But that didn't matter. He was back. I got off my bed and called for him, looking around to catch a glint of his eyes. Crying continued and I followed it. It was coming from under the bed. I laughed a little, thinking that I had just crawled under a house looking for him and how this was so much better. His meows were being muffled by a shirt, so I flung it aside, smiled, yelling, "Welcome home, Boxes!" His cries were coming from my walkie-talkie. Boxes never came home. And that is the end of Boxes. How you feeling at this point?
So now he knows where you live this time.
Reading this more recently, that hit me a lot harder having cats. Just like the idea of like him missing for so long and then like holy shit he's back, and then it's literally I mean that's terrifying as well. I mean that's a terrifying thought, especially coming from that situation. Like yeah, he knows you're home, but then also he knows that's your cat and he knows that like he's tormenting you with it. Ugh. No, that would break me. I would get on that radio and be like, tell me where the fucking cat is. I'll send you ass pics. to maps. There was a comment in the last post that made me remember an event from my childhood that I always took as odd, but never considered it to be related to any of these stories. At this point, why? Like, genuinely, like, I fucking love this story, but it is so funny. Like, I never considered this thing to be related. And you're gonna listen to the story and be like, how did you not consider this to be related? You'll see.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he said about the last one.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Well, to be fair, you wouldn't assume that this is all the same person, I don't think, especially as a kid.
Like the same person stalking you?
Yeah. Well, especially as a kid, I don't think you'd even know really what a stalker is, but you're just like, this is bad.
Well,
like,
that's the thing. With me, if something was doing that, I would always just... I was watching horror movies with my mom and shit, so I would associate it with like a horror movie character, and I would think that I'm being followed by Michael Myers.
Fair enough. But then again, that's your own
me
personal
personally.
experience.
That's what I would think from if I was going.
I know.
I would think I was
author,
being followed by Michael Myers or Jason or something.
Yeah, I know that the author said a lot of these like memories were inspired by actual childhood memories, which makes sense. I mean, obviously this didn't happen to him, but like everything interlaced in between. So like I like it is cool to kind of see. Okay. The details might be present in your mind. Oh, well, yeah, he's talking about it now. Great, he heard us. It's funny how memories work. The details might all be present in your mind, though scattered and disarrayed, and then a single thought can stitch them back together almost instantly. I never thought of these events much because I was focused on the wrong details. I went back to my mom's house and went through my old childhood schoolwork, looking for something that I think is important. I couldn't find it, but I'll keep looking. Again, sorry for the length. Most old cities in the neighborhood in them weren't planned with the thought that the population would begin to grow exponentially, and would it have to be accommodated. The layout of the road is generally originally in response to the geographical restrictions and the necessity of connecting points of economic importance. Once the connecting roads are established, new businesses and roads are positioned strategically along the existing skeleton, and eventually the paths are carved into the earth and are immortalized into asphalt, leaving room for only minor modifications, additions, and alterations, but never a dramatic change.
When did we enter the fucking subreddit for building highways? What is this?
I know, it's so weird how, like, he just dove into that so aggressively, but it was just to get
what are you, I don't even understand the context. Why are you telling me this? Why did I just learn about what most cities do when they get bigger?
He's about to talk about it. My childhood neighborhood must have been old then, if straight lines move as the crow flies. Then my neighborhood must have been built based on the travels of snake. Holy shit, built based on the travels of snakes. Of a snake, I guess. The first houses built must have been placed around the lake, and gradually the inhabitable area increased as new extensions were built.
Now he turned into an 1800s limerick. Like, what is that?
But
built based on the travels of a snake? The fuck are you talking? You mean it zigzags? You know, snakes still travel straight, even though they wiggle.
Get it out.
Like, I understand the reference, but
you're mad at a 10-year-old.
This is him.
He himself isn't 10 anymore.
Him describing his old neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Well, that's why then. He's older, so he's being more of a douche about it. Maybe he's like an architect major at college or something. Maybe he's one of those, like, guitar guys. He brings one every single day. You never know. But these new extensions all ended abruptly at one point or another. There's only one entrance/exit for the entire neighborhood. Many of these extensions were limited by a tributary which both fed and drank from the lake and passed right by what I came to call, and I have called in these stories, the ditch. Many of the original homes had enormous yards, but some of those original plots had been divided, leaving properties with smaller and smaller boundaries. An aerial view of my neighborhood would give one the impression that an enormous squid had once died in the woods, and some adventuring entrepreneur found the corpse and paved the roads over its tentacles, only to withdraw his involvement and leave time, greed, and desperation to divide up the land among prospective homeowners, like an embarrassing attempt at the golden ratio. Yeah, I don't know where all of this came from. I don't think that's in the book. Oh, it's so funny.
He's mad at highways. He doesn't like how roads
I think so.
Things,
he's like, you know what? I need to interject this. I know this is gonna be a banger story. I gotta get this point across. From my porch, you could. From my porch, you could see the old houses that surrounded the lake, but the house of Miss Maggie was my favorite. She was, as best as I can remember, around 80 years old, but despite that, she was one of the friendliest people I had ever met. She had one of those loose set white curls.
What do you
and
mean,
always
despite that? Like, as if every 80-year-old is a cunt. Like, what?
Hey, some of them are rude, I guess. But I think you'll see why. You'll see why too. He's like kind of like creeped out by her, but not for any like actual reason. You'll understand why eventually.
Okay.
Where was it? She had a loose set of white curls and always wore light dresses with floral patterns. Also, do you want to voice Miss Maggie? You gotta do the oh hello. You gotta do like an old lady voice.
No, you got that.
Okay. She would talk to me and Josh from her back porch when we were swimming in the lake, and she would always invite us for snacks. She said that she was lonely. Her husband Tom was always away on business, but Josh and I would always decline her invitation because as nice as Miss Maggie was, there was still something odd about her. Every now and then we would swim away and she would say, "Chris and John, you're welcome here anytime." And we would hear her still yelling that when we were walking back into my house. Miss Maggie, like many of the other
Chris and John?
Yeah. Miss Maggie, like many of the other older homeowners, had a sprinkler system that was on a timer. Though at some points over the year, her timer must have broken because the sprinklers would come on at various points during the day and often even at night all year. While it never gets cold enough to snow very much, several times each winter I would go outside in the morning to see Miss Maggie's yard transformed into a surreal Arctic paradise by the frozen water. Every other yard stood sterilized and dry by the biting frost of winter's cold, but right there in the middle of the bleak reminder of the savagery of the season was an oasis of beautiful ice hanging like stalactites from every branch of every tree and every leaf of every bush. It sounds like he was like writing on English paper right here.
Yeah, it's like, hey man, I gotta reach that word count.
For real. As the sun rose, it reflected off each piece of ice splintered into the sun into a rainbow that would only be viewed briefly before it blinded you. Even as a child, I was struck by how beautiful it was. It does paint a picture, though, I will say that. And often, Josh, I would go over there and walk on the ice in grass and have sword fights with the icicles. Hell yeah. I once asked my mom... I just saw Cheese's arm, like, pop all the way under the door. Freaked me the fuck out.
You would throw the icicles at each other like kunai from Naruto.
I believe you. I once asked my mom why she left it on, or like that. My mom seemed to search for an explanation before she said.
Wait, I once asked my mom why she left it on. Left what
the
on?
Sprinkler. The sprinkler system.
Miss Maggie is his mom?
No, he was asking his mom why Miss Maggie leaves the sprinkler system on. Miss Maggie is their neighbor.
Okay. I was like wondering, like, did she ask Miss Maggie, and calling Miss Maggie my mom? I was very confused.
No, you're good.
Well, sweetie, Mrs. Maggie is sick a lot, and sometimes when she gets really sick, she gets confused. That's why she messes up yours and Josh's names sometimes. She doesn't mean to, but sometimes she just can't remember. She lives in that big house all by herself, so it's okay if you talk to her when you swim in the lake. But when she invites you in, you should keep saying no. Be polite, her feelings won't get hurt.
But she'll be less lonely when her husband comes home, though, right? How long will he be away on business? It seems like he's always away. My mom seemed to struggle, and I could see that she had become very upset. Finally, she answered.
Honey, Tom's not going to come home. Tom's in heaven. He died years and years ago, but Mrs. Maggie doesn't remember. She gets confused and forgets, but Tom's never coming home. Or not ever coming, I guess same thing. If someone moved back in with her, she might even think it was Tom. But he's gone, sweetie.
I've only been around 5 or 6 when she told me that, and while I didn't understand it completely, I was still profoundly sad for Miss Maggie. I know now that Miss Maggie had Alzheimer's. She and her husband Tom had 2 sons, Chris and John. There you go. The two had worked out payment plans with the utility companies and paid for Miss Maggie's water and electricity, but they would never visit her. I don't know if something happened between them, or if it was the illness, or if they just lived too far away, but they never came around. I have no idea what they looked like, but there were so many times when Miss Maggie must have thought Josh and I looked like... But there were times when Miss Maggie must have thought Josh and I looked like they did when they were children. Or maybe she saw what some part of her mind so desperately wanted her to see. ignoring the images transmitted down her optic nerve just for a little while, showing her what it used to be. I realized only
What's up
now
with the word
how
vomit?
lonely- I don't know. The book cuts a lot of this out, for sure. I realize only now how lonely she must have been. During the summer after kindergarten, before the events of balloons, Josh and I had taken to exploring the woods near my house, as well as the tributary of the lake. We knew that the woods between our houses were connected, and we thought it would be neat if the lake near my house was somehow connected to the creek around his, so we resolved ourselves to find out. We were going to make maps. It's the name of the story. The plan was to make 2 separate maps and then combine them. We would only make one map exploring the area around the creek near his house, and then make another following the outflow from my lake. Originally, we were going to make one map, but we realized that wasn't possible since I had started drawing the map of my area so huge that the route from his house wouldn't have been to scale. We kept the map from the lake at my house and the map from the creek at his house, and we would add to each when we stayed the night with each other. For the first couple weeks, it went really well. We would walk through the woods along the water and pause every couple minutes to add to the map, and it seemed like the 2 maps would come together any day. We had no equipment needed for the job, not even a compass, but we tried to make do. We had the idea to impale the earth with a stick when we reached the end of the venture, so if we came upon the stick from the other direction the next weekend, we would know if we had joined the maps. We might have been the world's worst cartographers. Eventually, however, the woods became too thick near the water coming from the lake, and we were unable to proceed further. We lost interest in the whole project for a bit and reduced our exploration significantly, though not completely, when we started selling our snow cones. After I showed my mom all the pictures I had taken from school and she took away my snow cone machine, our interest in the maps revitalized. We had to come up with another plan. Although I didn't understand why, my mom...
We need the story of why you got grounded from the snow cone machine. Did you or Josh pee in it?
No, she took it away because, remember, he got that dollar back? The one that he had originally sent out to his Penpal?
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's implying that the Penpal was there and bought a snow cone from them.
Yeah, I got that.
Okay.
I wasn't sure that... I didn't know that she took it away.
I like your idea, though.
That.
I like your idea, though. Josh and Nate just peed into the snow cone machine. That could be cool.
And they got grounded for it.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that reason. Let's make it a happier story. After I showed my mom all the pictures I had taken home from school, and she took away my snow cone machine, our interest in the maps revitalized. We had come up with another plan. Although I didn't understand why, my mom had placed what I considered to be extremely severe restrictions on what I could do and where I could go. I had to check in frequently. If I went to play outside with Josh, or if I had to check in frequently if I went to play outside with Josh. This meant that we wouldn't stay in the woods for hours and continue to look for a new path. We thought that we could just swim when we got to the cutoff in the woods, but that clearly wouldn't work since the map would get wet. We tried going faster when we were coming from Josh's house, but we eventually ran into the same problem. Then we had a brilliant idea. We'd build a raft.
Yeah, that can only go well.
Right? Due to the construction in the neighborhood.
6-year-olds, 7-year-olds building a raft?
I think, if I'm remembering right, the snow cones, yeah, like, they're like, or did he not say he was like 10 for the snow cones? I'm pretty sure.
No, he was 10 when they went back to the house.
Oh, wait, yeah, you're right.
Snow cones was the 1 year, and then Josh got that one for his birthday.
Okay. Well, then yeah, so like 6 to 8, somewhere in that range, I'd say. Due to the construction in the neighborhood, there was a large amount of scrap building material that the company would set in the ditch to keep it out of the road and off-site since they no longer needed it for building, so they littered. We originally conceived of a formidable ship with a mast and an anchor, but this quickly diminished into something more manageable. We set aside the wood and took several large pieces of styrofoam that were packed with foam board and tied them together with rope and kite string. We launched our vessel a little down water from Miss Maggie and waved a farewell to her as she motioned to us to come back her way, but there was no stopping us. The raft worked very well, and while we both behaved and spoke as if the functionality of the raft was a given, I know at least I was a little surprised. I mean, if I'm envisioning what they're talking about, yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't work. If it's just literally a giant piece of like foam, like, it would work for a while at least until it took on enough water. But we found it. Okay. The raft worked very well, and while we both behaved and spoke as if the functionality of the raft was given, I know at least I was surprised, at least I was a little surprised. We each had a fairly long tree branch to use as a paddle, but we found it is simply easier to push against the land under the water than actually use them as intended. When the water became too deep, we'd simply lie on our stomachs and use our hands to paddle the water, which still worked, albeit less well. First time we had to resort to that method of propulsion, I remember thinking that from far above it must have looked like a colossally fat man with tiny arms was out for a swim. What a... really painting the picture here. Where's the word vomit now? I needed a very deep description of this colossally fat man.
Yeah.
It actually took us several...
rolls?
Exactly. How many chins? You gotta lay it out. How greasy is he? It actually took us several trips to get the raft to the impassable patch of woods that marked the farthest we had made it. After we had come up with the idea of marking the ground with a stick, we had taken to running through the woods until we got to the stick, and then, as carefully and precisely as we knew how, charting our course. This meant that the impasse was actually quite a bit away, so to sail from around my house all the way to the blockade in the woods was taking longer than expected. We'd sail for a bit and then dock the raft, and then next time we'd run through the woods and the raft... Oh my god. Next time we'd run through the woods to the raft and go a little farther. I'm like having a stroke reading this right now. We continued this well into first grade. So yeah, definitely, like, what, first grade? You're like 7?
Yeah.
Yeah. Josh and I were assigned to different groups that year, so since we didn't really see each other during the school day, our parents were more willing to let us hang out all weekend each week. What's more, Josh's dad had taken on a lengthy construction job that required him to work over the weekends. His mother was on call, so this meant Josh would stay at my house most of every weekend for weeks on end. We should have been making excellent progress, but when we finally made it to the impasse and had the opportunity to explore past it, we couldn't find a place to dock the raft. Woods were simply too thick, and the water had eroded the land to the point where there was nearly a 2-foot rise of earth over the tributary, which was exposed to the twisting and damp roots of the trees above. We'd have to turn back every time and leave the raft at the same thick of trees that prompted us to build it in the first place. Even worse, winter had arrived, so we couldn't justify leaving the house in our swimsuits. We were getting nowhere. We always had to come home before we could gain much ground. On a Saturday around 7 p.m., Josh and I were playing when one of my mom's coworkers knocked on our door. Her name was Samantha, and I remember her well now because I would propose to her a couple years later when I was visiting my mom at work. My mom said that she had to go to work to fix a problem that had arisen, and that she'd be back in about 2 hours. That's such a weird detail. That's like, so, like, I don't know why that was interjected in, because it's never brought up ever again.
What, proposing to a girl while you're in, like, what, the 2nd grade?
Well, no, like, he actually, like, he's saying that, like, they're married now, like, in the story, like, or in the present, but, like, I think that's what he's implying. But, like, it's so weird because, like, at this point you're, like, 7, and you said that's your mom's coworker, so how fucking old is she?
Well, it's like, my mom's coworker knocked on our door. Her name was Samantha, and I remember her well now because I would propose to her a couple of years later. Like, as a kid, proposing to an adult because he liked her and shit. Like, I had that too when I was a kid. It's one of my earliest memories with a waitress at a breakfast place my dad would bring me to.
Oh no. How'd that go?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really remember the details. I just remember that specifically. Enough. I was like...
When you first gained consciousness?
Yeah, it's like one of my... Like I said, like, one of my earliest memories is when I was, like, 2. Mm-hmm. And it's just riding a tricycle in a hallway in, like, an apartment that we used to live in. But that's all I can remember. It's just, I used to ride my tricycle in that hallway. But then, it was the same. I just know this because, you know, having it pointed out to me as I was older. Downstairs from that apartment where I would do that was that breakfast place. We lived above it.
Oh, okay. Hell yeah.
No, I would always get a pancake shaped like Mickey Mouse.
Perfect. The ideal breakfast. Okay, let's see. Well, I visit my mom at work. My mom said that she had to go to work to fix a problem that had arisen and that she'd be back in about 2 hours. Her car was being repaired, so she'd have to give a ride, or have a ride with Samantha. But I gathered that the problem was Samantha's fault. What? Was Samantha's fault, and discussing it in the car was why it would only take 2 hours. Oh. She said that under no circumstances were we to leave the house or open the door for anyone. She was in the middle of explaining that she would call every hour when she got there to check in, but she ended that statement prematurely when she remembered that our phone had been turned off for delinquent payments. Damn. This was why Samantha hadn't just come by unannounced. She looked me dead in the eye as if she was closing the door and said, "Stay put." This was our chance. I hate this kid. We watched her drive down the Serpentine Road and towards the exit, and there's your Serpentine again. As soon as the car rounded the last visible bend, we ran back to my room. I dumped my backpack out while Josh grabbed the map.
Hey, do you have a flashlight?
Josh chimed. "No, but we'll be back way before dark."
I was thinking, just in case, you should have one.
My mom has one, but I don't know where she keeps it. Wait! I ran into my closet and pulled out a box from the top shelf.
You have a flashlight in there?
Josh asked. Not exactly. I opened the box and revealed 3 Roman candles. Oh. Well, I guess. Could be. You know what? I'm not going to open that can of worms. I opened the box and revealed 3 Roman candles that I had taken from the pile that my mother had amassed for the 4th of July that past summer. Just letting your kid collect fucking fireworks? Okay. Everyone in this story is an idiot. Along with the lighter that I had managed to take from her... along with the lighter that I had managed to take from her some months before, this would ensure that we at least had some light if we needed it. This was a little bit before I had even given an opportunity to be afraid of the woods at night, so it wasn't a fear that motivated our search for a light source, only practicality. We threw it all in the backpack and bolted out the back door, making sure to close it so boxes wouldn't get out. We had 1 hour and 50 minutes. We ran through the woods as fast as we could and made it to the raft in about 15 minutes. We had our bathing suits on under our clothes, so we stripped off our shirts and shorts and left them in 2 separate piles.
That's exactly what this guy wants.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait
And
for a
about
picture
4
of you
feet.
guys to be at, like, you guys on the raft to be at your doorstep.
So we stripped off our shirts and shorts and left them in the 2 separate piles about 4 feet from the edge of the water. We untied the raft from the tree and grabbed our branch paddles and cast off. We tried to move rapidly to reach a point beyond the contents of our ever-expanding map, as we didn't have time to waste seeing old sights. We knew that we were slower in the raft than on land, and then we would be in the raft for quite a while after the cutoff since the woods were too thick to walk through. There wasn't a place to dock. This meant we'd have to ride the raft back to the original docking site, even if we found a new place to dock it further ahead. After we passed the last charted part of our map, the water began to get really deep, and eventually we could no longer touch the bottom with our tree branches. So we lay on our stomachs and paddled with our hands. It was getting darker, and as a result, it was becoming harder to distinguish the trees from another, and we were both becoming slightly unnerved. In the interest of making good time, we were paddling fast with our arms, but this caused a lot of noise as our hands repeatedly confronted and then broke through the water's surface tension. During these periods, we could hear the crunching of dead leaves and the snapping of fallen sticks in the woods to our right. As we would slow our pace and quiet our actions, the rustling of the woods would cease, and we began to wonder if it was really there at all. We didn't know what kinds of animals resided this far into the woods, but we did know that we didn't wish to find out.
Why are you still thinking it's animals?
They're stupid-ass kids.
It hasn't been animals.
It's
Except
he
for the
always just
one
wants
time when you sat on a rat.
Yeah. Hey, Max, it could just be him sitting on a rat again. You never know.
Yeah, in the middle of the... Tired of these motherfucking rats on my motherfucking raft.
Boat. Perfect. I said boat. Raft is better. As Josh amended the map I was illuminating with the lighter, we were suddenly confronted with the fact that the sounds were not imagined. Rapidly and rhythmically we heard crunch, snap, crunch. It seemed to be moving slightly away from us, pushing through the woods just beyond our map. It had become too dark to see. We had misjudged how long the sun would linger. Nervously I called out, "Hello?" There was a brief moment of tension and as we lay static in the water. Silence was suddenly broken by laughter.
Hello?
So what?
Hello, Mr. Monster in the Woods. I know you're sneaking around, but maybe you'll answer to my hello. Hello?
I realized how stupid it was. Whatever animal it wouldn't respond. I hadn't even realized I'd said it until afterwards, but if anything was actually there, I obviously wouldn't get a reply. Josh continued.
Hello?
In a high falsetto.
I don't know
Hello,
what
I
falsetto
countered.
is.
Really, hello! And then
Oh.
baritone, yeah. I countered with a deep baritone as I can manage. Hello!
Hello
Josh.
there, mate.
Hello, beep boop. What the fuck?
I think it's just hello.
We continued mocking each other, and we were in the process of turning the raft around to head back when we heard hello.
Hello. Oh, God.
It was whispered in force as if it were powered by the last breath in a pair of deflating lungs, but it didn't sound sickly. It had come from the spot just off the map, which now sat behind us since we had turned the raft around. I slowly shifted on the raft and faced the direction of the sound as I fumbled with the Roman candle I wanted to see.
What are you doing?
Josh hissed, but I had already lit it. As the sparking fuse sunk into the wrapper, I held it towards the sky. I never actually shot one of these myself and thought to use it just like a flare in the movies. A glowing green orb rocketed out towards the stars and then quickly extinguished. I lowered my arm more towards the horizon. I could remember that there were several colors, but I couldn't remember how many times one of these fired before being depleted. A second ball of red light burst out and fizzled above the trees. I still saw nothing.
Let's just go, man.
Josh pressed as he turned to face the direction back home and began paddling desperately. Just one more. Lowering my arm directly in front of the woods, in front of me, another red ball was launched from the tube. It traveled straight until it collided with the tree, briefly exploding, the light much greater in diameter. Still nothing. I dropped the firework in the water and watched as one more struggling fireball burst free to quickly die suffocated by the water. As we began paddling in the direction towards my house, we heard a loud, unconcealed rustling in the woods. The breaking of branches and the trampling of fallen leaves overpowered the sounds of our splashing. It was running. In our panic, we jostled the raft too violently, and I felt one of the ropes under my chest loosen. "Josh, be careful!" But it was too late. Our raft was breaking. Before too long, it had completely fallen apart. We each held on to a separate piece of styrofoam, but the pieces weren't big enough to keep us completely afloat, and our legs dangled beneath us in the winter water. "Josh, quick!" I yelled, and I pointed to the water right next to him. He scrambled, but it was too cold to move quickly, and we both watched as the map floated away.
I'm cold, man.
Josh shuddered
Let's get out of the water.
We approached the shore, but each time we attempted to pull ourselves, we'd hear the frantic rustling thundering towards us from the woods just above. Eventually, we were too cold and weak to even try anymore. Steadily, we kicked our legs and found ourselves nearing the dock site. We toppled off the debris and tried to pull onto land. But Josh's pieces slipped away and floated in the direction of the lake, but we took off our swimsuits and were desperate to get into dry clothes to shield us from the biting chill of the air. I slid my shirts, but there was something wrong. I turned to Josh. "Where's my shirt, man?" He shrugged and suggested,
"Maybe you got knocked into the water and floated into the lake."
I told Josh to go back to my house and say that we were playing hide and seek if my mom was home. I had to try to find my shirt. I ran behind the house and peered out over the water and scouted along the shoreline. It occurred to me with any luck, maybe I could find the map too. I was moving pretty fast. I needed to get home and was about to give up my concentration and was interrupted by a sound coming just behind me. "Hello?" I whipped around. It was Miss Maggie. I had never seen her at night before. In this poor light, she looked exceedingly frail. The usual warmth in her manner seemed to be snuffed out by the chill. I couldn't even remember her, or ever seeing her without a smile, and her face looked so strange. "Hello, Miss Maggie." "Oh, hi, Chris." The warmth in her smile had even returned to her, and her memories had not. "I couldn't see it was you in the dark there." Jokingly, I asked her if she was going to invite me in for a snack, but she said maybe another time. I was too busy looking for my map and the shirt to really engage her, but she sounded happy, so I didn't feel bad. She said a couple other things, but I was too distracted to pay attention. I said goodnight and ran down her driveway towards the house, or towards my house. Behind me, I could hear her walking across the frozen yard, but I didn't turn around to wave. I had to get home. I made it a couple minutes before my mom did, and she just came in, and Josh and I had already changed clothes and warmed up. We had gotten away with it, even though we'd lost the map.
Couldn't find it?
No, but I saw Miss Maggie. She called me Chris again. I'm telling you, dude. Just be glad you never see her at night. So fucking mean. We both laughed, and he asked me... I know! We both laughed, and he asked me if she invited me in for a snack, joking that the snacks must be terrible since she couldn't give them away. I told him that she didn't, and he was surprised, and now I had time to think about it, and so was I. Literally every time we had seen her, she had invited us in for snacks, and here, albeit sarcastically, invited myself, and she said no. As Josh talked more about Miss Maggie, I suddenly realized that the lighter might still be in my pocket, and that would be disastrous for my mom to find. I grabbed the shorts off the floor and patted my pockets. I felt something, but it wasn't the lighter. From my back pocket, I slid out a folded piece of paper, and my heart leapt. The map? I thought, but I watched it float away. As I unfolded the paper, my stomach turned as I tried to understand what I was seeing. Drawn on the paper inside of a large oval were two stick figures holding hands. One was much bigger than the other, but neither had faces. The paper was torn, so a part of it was missing, and there was a number written near the top right corner. It was either 15 or 16. I nervously handed Josh the paper and asked him if he had put this in my pocket at some point, but he scoffed at the idea and asked why I was so upset. I pointed towards a smaller stick figure and what was written next to it. It was my initials. I shook it off, and Josh told the rest of the conversation between Miss Maggie and I. I had always attributed the odd exchange to her being sick until revising the events in my mind all these years later. As I thought about it now, the feeling of profound sadness for Miss Maggie returns, but is augmented by a looming feeling of despair when I think about why she said, maybe another time. I knew what she had said, but I didn't understand what it had meant that night. I didn't understand that her words had meant weeks later when I watched men in strange orange biohazard suits carry out what I thought were black bags full of garbage out of her house, or why the whole neighborhood smelled like death that day. I still didn't understand when they condemned the house and boarded it up a little while before we moved out. But I understand it now. I understand why her last words to me were so important, even if neither she nor I realized it at the time. Miss Maggie had told me that night that Tom had come home. But I know now who had really moved in, just as I know why I never saw her body brought out on a stretcher. Those bags weren't filled with garbage.
So this dude moved in with her and cut her up?
Uh-huh. But, yeah, so that's the crazier part, is, like, you don't know how long he's actually just been living there that whole time.
Yeah.
I love it. Alright, on to screens. Getting towards the end. I've intentionally withheld some details from a lot of my stories. I've let my hopes concerning the way things might influence my evaluation of the way they actually are. I don't think there's any point to that anymore. At the end of the summer between kindergarten and first grade, I caught the stomach flu. This has all the components of the regular flu. However, with the stomach flu, you throw up in a bucket and not the toilet because you were sitting on it. The sickness gets purged from both ends. Cool. This lasted for 10 days, but just before it had passed, the sickness was granted an extension in the form of pink eye. Because you were scratching your eyes, weird little shit. My eyelids were so fused together by the dried mucus generating the day I first awoke with the infection, I thought I had gone blind. When I started first grade, I had a kink in my neck from 10 days of bed rest and 2 swollen, bloodshot eyes. Josh was in another group and didn't have my lunch, so in cafeteria bursting with 200 kids, I still had a table to myself. What a fucking loser, dude. I started keeping spare food in my backpack that I would take into the bathroom to eat after lunch, since my school meals were usually confiscated by older kids who knew I wouldn't stand up to them, since no one would stand with me. The dynamic persisted even after my condition cleared up, since no one wanted to be friends with the kids who gets bullied, lest they have some of that aggression directed toward themselves. The only reason this stopped was due to the actions of a kid named Alex. Alex was in the 3rd grade and was bigger than most of the other kids in any grade. Around the 3rd week of school, he had started sitting with me at lunch and put an immediate end to the shortage of my food supply. He was nice enough, but he seemed kind of slow. We never really talked at the length except for when I finally decided to ask why he'd been sitting with me. He had a crush on Josh's sister, Veronica.
Josh had a sister?
Veronica... Yeah. This is going to divulge into who she is. Veronica was in the 4th grade and was probably the prettiest girl in the school. Even as a 6-year-old who fully endorsed the notion that girls were disgusting, I still knew how pretty Veronica was. When she was in 3rd grade, Josh told me 2 boys had actually gotten into a physical fight, which erupted out of the argument concerning the significance of the messages she had written in their yearbooks. One of the boys eventually hit the other in the forehead with the corner of the yearbook, and the wound required stitches to close. Well, not one of those 2 boys. Alex wanted her to like him and confessed that he knew Josh and I were best friends. I gathered that he had hoped I would convey his ostensibly philanthropic deed to Veronica. Fuck you, nerd.
What?
I would convey his ostensibly philanthropic deed.
I don't know what that word is.
He's trying to say that he did a good thing, even though he didn't really do anything.
Okay.
And that she would presumably be moved by his selflessness and that she'd take interest in him. But I told her he would continue to sit with me for as long as I needed him to. Because this was during the time Josh mostly stayed at my house, building the raft and navigating the tributary with me, I didn't have the chance to bring it up to Veronica because I simply didn't see her. I told Josh about it and he made fun of Alex, but said that he would tell his sister since I wanted him to. I doubted that he would. Josh was annoyed that people seemed to be so taken with his sister. I remember him calling her an ugly crow. Jesus. I never said anything to Josh, but I remember wanting to say even then that she was pretty and would one day be beautiful. I was right. When I was 15, I was seeing a movie at a place my friends and I had come to call the Dirt Theater. He really likes dirt. It was probably nice at some point, but time and neglect had weathered the place severely. This theater had movable tables and chairs on the level floor, so when the theater was full, there were very few places you could sit and see the whole screen. The theater was still open, I imagine, for 3 reasons. It was cheap to see a movie there, they showed a different cult movie twice a month at midnight, and they sold beer to underage kids during midnight showings. That's all you need. I went in for the first 2, and that night they were showing Scanners by David Cronenberg for $1. That's a fucking deal. My friends and I were sitting, and beer, underage, that's crazy. My friend and I were sitting in the very back. I wanted to sit closer to the front for a better view, but Ryan had driven, so I relented. A couple of minutes before the movie started, a group of girls walked in. They were all pretty attractive, but whatever beauty they might have had was eclipsed by the girl with the dirty blonde hair. Even though I had only caught a glimpse of her profile as she turned to move to her seat, I caught a full view of her face, which gave me feelings of butterflies in my stomach. It was Veronica.
Oh, wait,
I hadn't seen her in a long.
When are we?
What? He's
how far?
15.
Oh yeah, they're 15 now. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't catch.
So
that,
his friends were driving him and stuff. He isn't driving yet, but yeah, his friends drove him. I hadn't seen her in a long time. Josh and I saw progressively less of each other, or less of one another after we snuck out to my old house that night when we were 10. So that was basically, like, well, that wasn't the last time they interacted, but that was definitely, like, one of their last major times hanging out.
Yeah.
And usually when I'd visit him, she'd be out with friends. While everyone stared at the screen, I stared at Veronica, only looking away when the feeling was that I was being a creep overcame me. But that feeling quickly would subside and my eyes would return to her. She was really beautiful, just like I had thought she'd be when I was a kid. Weird. When the credits started to roll, my friends got up and left. There was only one exit and they didn't want to be trapped waiting for the crowd to clear. I lingered in hopes of catching Veronica's attention, and she and her friends walked in and I took a chance. "Hey, Veronica." She turned toward me and a little bit startled. "You want to voice her?"
Yeah.
I got out of my seat and stepped into the little light coming through the open door. "It's me, Josh's old friend from way back. How have you been?"
Oh my god. Hey, it's been so long.
She motioned to her friends that she'd be out in a second. "Yeah, a few years at least. Not since the last time I stayed over with Josh. How is he anyway?"
Oh, that's right. I remember all you guys'
All your
games.
Yeah, all
Do you
your...
still play Ninja Turtles with your friends?
She laughed a little and I blushed. "No, I'm not a kid anymore. Me and my kids play X-Men, or me and my friends play X-Men now." I was really hoping she'd laugh. She did.
You're so cute. Do you come to these movies every time?
I was still reeling from what she said. Did she really think I'm cute? Did she just mean I was funny? Does she think I'm attractive? I just suddenly realized that she had asked me a question and my mind grasped for what it was. "Yeah!" I shouted much too loudly. "Yeah! I try to anyway. What about you?" I come every now and then. My boyfriend didn't like these movies, but we just broke up, so I'm planning on coming from now on. I was trying to be casual, but failed. "Oh, well, that's cool. Not that you broke up. I just meant that you'd be able to come more often." She laughed again. I tried to recover. "So are you coming the week after next? They're supposed to show Day of the Dead. It's really cool."
Yeah, I'll be there.
"Here! Not there!" "Oh my god. You're fired." She smiled and I was about to suggest that maybe we could sit together when she quickly closed the space between us and hugged me.
It was really good to see you,
she said with her arms around me. I was trying to think of what to say when I realized the biggest problem was that I had forgotten how to talk. Luckily, Ryan, who I could hear approaching from the hallway, came in and spoke for me. "Dude, you know the movie's over, right? Let's get the fuck out of..." "Oh, yeah!" Veronica let go and said that she'd see me next time. She was played out of the room by the porn music Ryan was making with his mouth. I was furious, but it dissipated as soon as I heard Veronica laughing in the lobby. Day of the Dead couldn't come soon enough. Ryan's family was going out of town, so he wouldn't be able to drive us, and the other friends I was with that night didn't have cars. A couple days before the movie, I asked my mom if she could take me. She responded almost immediately by denying my request, but I persisted, and she picked up on the desperation in my voice. She asked why I wanted to go so badly since I had seen that movie before, and I hesitated before saying that I was hoping to see a girl there. She smiled and asked playfully if she knew the girl, and I reluctantly told her it was Veronica. The smile disappeared from her face, and she coldly said,
"No."
I decided that I would call Veronica to see if she could pick me up. I had no idea if she still lived at home, but it was worth a try. But then I realized Josh might answer. I hadn't talked to him in almost 3 years, and if he had answered, I obviously couldn't just ask to talk to his sister. I felt guilty for calling to speak with Veronica and not Josh, but I dismissed that feeling quickly. Josh hadn't called me in years either. I picked up the phone and dialed the number, but it was still embedded in my muscle memory from having dialed it so often all those years ago. It rang several times before someone picked up. It wasn't Josh. I felt a mixture of both relief and disappointment. I realized that second I really missed Josh. I would call this weekend and talk to him, but this was my only chance to see if Veronica could or would take me, so I asked for her. The person told me I had dialed the wrong number. I repeated the number back to her and she had confirmed. She said they must have changed their number and I agreed. I apologized for the disturbance and hung up. I was suddenly intensely sad, because now I couldn't even contact Josh even if I wanted to. I felt terrible for having been afraid that he might answer the phone. He had been my very best friend. I realized that the only way I could be put back in touch with him would be
Now
through
you're trying
Veronica.
to fuck his sister.
Yeah. What a friend. Would be through Veronica, so now that I needed one, I had another reason to see her. I told my mom the day before the movie I was no longer concerned with going, but was hoping she could drop me off at my friend Chris's house. She relented and dropped me off Saturday, a couple hours before the movie. My plan was to walk from his house to the theater, since he only lived about a half mile away. They went to the church early on Sunday, so his parents would go to sleep early on Saturday night, and Chris was fine with not coming with me, since he had planned on chatting with this girl he met online. He'd said that the walk back to his house would be even lonelier after she laughed in my face when I tried to kiss her. I told him not to electrocute himself when he tried to have sex with his computer. I left his house at 11:15. What?
That sounds like normal conversation you would have with your friend.
It does. He does a good job of setting the dialogue for all these characters so far. I tried to pace myself so I'd get there just a little before the movie. I was going by myself, and so I didn't want to just hang around there waiting. On the way to the theater, I figured that if Veronica showed up, all it would be lucky for us to arrive at the same time, so I debated whether I should just wait outside or just go in. Both had their pros and cons. As I was grappling with these concerns, I noticed that the steady stream of streaking car lights had been overtaking me and replaced by a single, constant spotlight that refused to pass. The road wasn't illuminated by streetlights, so I was walking in the grass with the road about 2 feet to my left. I stepped a little more to my right and craned my neck over my shoulder to see what was behind me. A car had stopped about 10 feet behind me. All I could see were the violently bright headlights that were cutting through the otherwise Stygian surroundings. I thought it might be one of Chris's parents. Maybe they had come to check on us and seen that I was gone. Wouldn't have taken much pressing for Chris to confess. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hold on, my headset turned off. It's being weird. Speak.
No.
Okay. All I could see were the violently bright light. Fuck. Here we go. I took one step toward the car, and it broke its pause and started driving towards me at a slow pace. It passed me, and I saw that it wasn't Chris's parents or any of the car that I had recognized for that matter. I tried to see the driver, but it was too dark, and my pupils had shrunk when faced with the blinding lights from the car just moments before. They adjusted enough so that I could see a tremendous crack in the back of the window of the car as it drove away. I didn't think much of the whole affair. Some people find it fun to scare other people. I often hide around corners and jump out at my mom, after all. That's with someone you know, though. I timed it right and got there about 10 minutes before the movie. I decided to wait outside until around 11:57.
That's a crazy-ass jump. It's like, yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
I hide around the corner and scare my mom, so it's normal for people to just stop their car 10 feet behind me.
In the middle of a desolate road and just, like, watch me for a couple seconds. That's fine. Since that would give me time to find her inside if she was already seated. As I was considering the possibility that she might not show, I saw her. She was alone and she was beautiful. I waved to her and walked to close the distance. She smiled and asked if my friends were already inside. I said they weren't and realized that this must seem like I was trying to make this a date. She didn't seem bothered by that, nor was she bothered when I handed her the ticket that I had already bought. She looked at me quizzically and I said, "Don't worry, I'm rich." She laughed and we went inside. I bought us 1 popcorn and 2 drinks and spent most of the movie debating whether or not I should time reaching my hand into the popcorn bag when she reached in so they would touch. She seemed to enjoy the movie, and before I knew it, it was over. We didn't linger in the theater, and because this was a midnight show, we couldn't loiter in the lobby, so we walked outside. The parking lot of the theater was big because it connected with a mall that had gone out of business. Not wanting the night to be over just yet, I continued the conversation while casually walking toward the old mall. As we were about to round the corner and leave the theater out of sight, I looked back and saw that her car wasn't the only one left in the parking lot. The other one had a large crack in the back window. My immediate uneasiness turned into understanding. That makes a lot of sense. The driver of that car works here and must have figured I was on my way to the movie. Injecting real horror into the life of a horror fan seemed like an obvious move. What?
That is...
Yeah, no, that's a really dumb...
That's
a really dumb justification.
Movie theater workers get paid so well that they're
they really give a
willing to...
God. We walked around the mall and talked about the movie. I told her that I thought Day of the Dead was better than Dawn of the Dead, but she refused to agree. I told her when I called her old number and about my dilemma about who would answer the phone. She didn't find it funny as I did. But she took my phone and put her number in it. She commented that it might be the worst cell phone she's ever seen. Her evaluation wasn't rescinded when I told her I couldn't even receive pictures on it. I called her so she'd save my number, and she programmed it in. She told me that she was graduating, but she hadn't done well in school so far that year, so she isn't sure if she's even going to college. I told her to attach a picture of herself to the application, and they'd pay her to go there just so they could look at her. She didn't laugh at that one, but I thought she might be offended. She might have thought it was implying that she couldn't get based in on her intelligence. I nervously glanced at her, and she was just smiling, and even in the poor light I could see that she was blushing. I wanted to hold her hand, but I didn't. As we walked down the final side of the mall back towards the theater, I asked her about Josh. She told me that she didn't want to talk about it. I asked her if he was at least doing alright. She said, I don't know. I figured Josh must have taken a wrong turn somewhere and started getting into trouble. I felt bad. I felt guilty. As we approached the parking lot, I noticed that the car with the cracked window
abducted. He's been abducted and touched.
As we approached the parking lot, I noticed that the car with the cracked back window was gone, and that her car was now the only one in the parking lot. She asked me if I needed a ride, and even though I really didn't, I said that I'd appreciate it. I had drunk my whole soda during the movie, and all that walking was putting pressure on my bladder. I knew I could wait until I was back at Chris's, but I had decided that I was going to try to kiss her when she dropped me off, and I didn't want biological nagging to rush me out of the car. This would be my first kiss. I could think of no words to conceal what I needed to do. The theater had long closed, so I'd only had one option. I told her I was going to go behind the theater to piss, but I'd be back in 2 shakes. It was obvious that it was hilarious, or I thought it was hilarious, and she seemed to laugh more at how funny I found it than at how funny it clearly was. On the way toward the theater, I stopped and turned toward her. I asked her if Josh had ever told her that kid named Alex had done something nice for me. She paused to think about it for a moment and said that he had. She inquired as to why I asked, but I said it was nothing. Josh really was a good friend. When I went to go behind the theater, I realized that there was a chain link fence extending off and running parallel to the walls of the building. Where I stood, she could still see me, and the fence seemed to stretch on endlessly, so I thought I'd just hop it, duck out of sight, and return as quickly as I could. May have been too much effort, but I thought it polite. I climbed the fence and walked a little way until I was out of sight and urinated. For a moment, only sounds were crickets in the grass behind me and the collision of liquid and cement. These sounds were overpowered by a noise that I could still hear when it's quiet. There are no other noises to distract my ears. In the distance, I heard a faint screeching, which quickly subsided only to be replaced with a cascade of thundering vibrations. I realized quickly enough what it was. It was a car. The growling of an engine got louder, and then I thought, not louder, closer. As soon as I realized, I started back toward the fence, but before I could get very far at all, I hear a brief, truncated scream, and at the roar of an engine terminated into a deafening thud. I started running, but after only 2 or 3 steps, I was tripped by loose pieces of stone and fell hard and fast onto the concrete, my head striking the corner of a chair as I fell. I was dazed for maybe 30 seconds, but the renewed rumbling of the engine drew my senses back and my equilibrium was restored by adrenaline. I redoubled my efforts. I was worried that whoever had crashed the car might harass Veronica. As I was climbing over the fence, I saw that there was only still 1 car in the parking lot. I didn't see any evidence of a crash. I thought that I might have misjudged the direction or the proximity. As I ran toward Veronica, and as my orientation changed, I saw what the car had hit. My legs stopped working almost completely. It was Veronica. Her car was sitting between us, and as I closed the distance to walk around it, she came fully into view. Her body was twisted and crumpled like a discarded figure, meant to represent a catalog of things the human body cannot do. I could see the bone of her right shin cutting through her jeans, and her left arm was wrapped so hard around the back of her neck that her hand fell right on her right breast. Her head was craned back, and her mouth hung widely open towards the sky. There was so much blood. As I looked at her, I actually found it hard to discern whether she was laying on her back or on her stomach, and the optical illusion made me feel sick. When you're confronted with something in the world that simply doesn't belong, your mind tries to convince itself that it is dreaming, and to the end it provides you with a distinct sense of all things moving slowly as if through sap. In that moment, I honestly felt like I could wake up at any minute, but I didn't wake up. I fumbled with my phone to call for help, but I had no signal. I could see Veronica's phone sticking out for what I thought was her front right pocket. I had no choice. Trembling, I reached for her phone, and as I slid it out, she moved and gasped her air so violently that it seemed as if she were trying to breathe in the
that'd be terrifying.
Fuck, dude. This startled me so much that I had staggered back and fell onto the asphalt with her phone in my hand. She was just trying to adjust her body to get into its natural position, but with every spasm and jerk I could hear the cracking and grinding of her bones. Without thinking, I scrambled over to her and put my face over hers and just said, "Veronica, don't move, okay? Just stay still. Don't move, Veronica, please, just don't move." I kept saying it, but the words started to fall apart as tears came streaming down my face. I opened her phone, it still worked. It was still on the screen where she had saved my number, and when I saw that, I felt my heart break a little. I called 911 and waited for her, telling her that she would be okay, feeling guilty for lying to her every time I said it. When the sound of sirens tore through the air, she seemed to become more alert. She had remained conscious since I found her. Now more light was coming back into her eyes. Her brain was still protecting her from the pain, though it looked as if it was finally allowing her to become aware that something was terribly wrong. With her eyes rolled over to mine and her lips moved. She was struggling, but I heard her.
He took it.
I didn't understand what she meant, so the only thing I could say is, "I'm so sorry, Veronica." I rode with her in the ambulance where she had finally lost consciousness. I waited in the room where they had reserved for her. I still had her phone, so I put it with her purse and I called my mom from the hospital phone. It was about 4 a.m. I told her that I was fine, but that Veronica was not. She cursed at me and said that she'd be right there, but I told her I wasn't leaving until Veronica was out of surgery. She said she'd come anyway. My mom and I didn't speak that much. I told her I was sorry for lying, and she said that we'd talk about that later. I think that we had talked more in that room if I had just told her about boxes or the night with the raft. If she had just told me more of what she knew, I think that things would have changed. But we sat right there in silence. She told me that she loved me, and I could call her whenever I wanted her to come get me. As my mom was leaving, Veronica's parents rushed in. Her dad and my mom exchanged a few words that appeared to be quite serious while Veronica's mother talked to the person at the desk. Her mother was a nurse but didn't work at this hospital. I'm sure that she tried to get Veronica transferred, but her condition was prohibitive. While we waited, the police came in and talked to each of us. I told them what happened, they made some notes, and then they left. She came out of surgery and 90% of her body was covered in a thick white cast. Her arm was free, but the rest of her was bound like a cocoon. She was still under, but I remembered how I felt when I had my cast before kindergarten. I asked a nurse for a marker.
Yeah, because that's exactly the same.
To write. Well, yeah. He's just trying to relate in any way. She was...
Yeah, this isn't so bad. I remember when I broke my arm in kindergarten.
I'm pretty tough.
This ain't nothing. I broke my arm when I was in kindergarten.
I asked a nurse for a marker, but I couldn't think of anything to write. I slept in a chair in the corner and went home the next day. I came back every afternoon for several days. At some point, they had moved another patient into a room and set up a screen around Veronica's bed to act as a partition. She didn't seem to be feeling better, but she had more moments of lucidity. But even during these periods, we wouldn't really talk. Her jaw was broken by the car, so the doctors had it wired shut. I sat with her for a while. There's so much I could say. I got up and walked over to her, kissed her on the forehead, and she whispered through her clenched teeth.
So, Nate Stalker here just got a little jealous. Is that what happened?
Seems like it. Seems like that would be the case. But through wired teeth.
Josh.
This surprised me a little, but I looked at her and said, "Has he not come to see you?"
No.
I found myself really irritated. Even if Josh had been getting into trouble, he should still come see his sister, I thought. I was about to express this when she said,
"No. Josh. He ran away. I should have told you."
I felt my blood turn to ice. When? When did this happen?
When he was 13. Yeah, he did get abducted and touched. I was right.
Did he leave a note or something?
On his pillow.
She started crying and I followed her, but I think now we were crying for different reasons, even if I didn't realize it. At this point, there were a lot of things I still remember about my childhood, and there were a lot of connections I hadn't yet made. I told her I had to go, but she could text me anytime. I got a text from her the next day telling me not to come back. I asked why, and she said that she didn't want me to see her like that again. I agreed begrudgingly. We texted each other every day, though I kept this from my mom because I knew that she didn't like me talking to Veronica. Usually her texts were fairly short, and mostly only in response to more lengthy texts that I would send her. I tried calling her only once.
Does this guy's mom know about Josh being missing? Is that why she didn't want him to hang out with Veronica?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Makes more sense now, right?
What an awful mom.
Yeah, no, I will say we'll talk about it more at the end, but I am a firm believer. I'm in the category that I think it is not solely on the mom, but a lot of this is the mom's fault. Okay.
It all started with that stupid-ass school.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. I tried calling her only once. I was sure that she was screening her calls, but hoped I could hear her voice. She picked up, but didn't say nothing. Or anything. The fuck. I could hear how labored her breathing was. About a week later, she told me not to come see her anymore. She sent me a text that simply read,
I love you.
I was filled with so many different emotions, but I responded by expressing the most prevalent one. I replied, I love you too. She said that she wanted to be with me and that she couldn't wait until she could see me again. She told me that she had been released and was convalescing at her house. These exchanges carried on for several weeks, but every time I asked to come see her, she would say soon. I kept insisting. In the following weeks, she said that she thought she might be able to make it to the next midnight movie. I couldn't believe it, but she insisted that she would try. I got a text from her that afternoon at the movie saying, see you tonight. I got Ryan to drive me since Chris's parents had found out what happened, and I wasn't welcome at their house anymore. I explained to Ryan that she might be in bad shape. I mean, fair enough. But that I really cared about her to give us some space. He accepted that, and we headed down there. Veronica didn't show. I had saved a seat for her right next to me in the exit so she could get in and out easily, but 10 minutes into the movie, a man slid into the chair. I whispered, excuse me, the seat is taken. But he didn't respond at all. He just stared at the screen, ahead at the screen. I remember wanting to move because there was something wrong with the way he was breathing. I forfeited because I realized that she wasn't coming. I texted her the next day if she was alright, and I inquired as to why she didn't show the previous night. She responded with what would turn out to be the last message I received from her. She simply said,
see you again soon. So, okay. He stole her phone from the hospital. But how does a random guy...
Hold on. We'll see.
Okay.
She was delirious and I was worried about her. I sent her several replies reminding her about the movie and saying it was no big deal, but she had just stopped replying. I grew increasingly upset over the next several days. I couldn't reach her at her home because I didn't know that number, and I wasn't even sure where they lived. My mood became increasingly depressed, and my mother, who had been really nice as of late, asked me if I was okay. I told her that I hadn't heard from Veronica in days, and I felt all the warmth leave her disposition. Oh, what do you mean? Wait, fuck, what? No, that's you. What do you mean? Oh well. Okay. She was supposed to meet me at the movies yesterday. I know it's only been like 3 weeks since she got hit, but she said she would try to come, and after that she just stopped talking to me altogether. She must hate me. She looked confused, and I could read it on her face that she was trying to tell if my mind had simply broken. When she saw that it hadn't, her eyes began to water and she pulled me toward her, embracing me. She was beginning to sob, but it seemed too intense of a reaction to my problem, and I had no reason to think that she particularly cared for Veronica. She drew in a shuddering breath, and then something that still made me nauseous even now. She said,
Veronica's dead, sweetheart. Oh God, I thought you knew. She died on the last day you visited her. Oh baby, she died weeks ago.
She had completely broken down, but I knew it wasn't because of Veronica. I broke the embrace and staggered backwards. My mind was swimming. This wasn't possible. I had just exchanged messages with her yesterday. I could only think to ask one question. It was probably the most trivial I could ask. And why was her phone still on? She continued sobbing and she didn't answer. I exploded. Why did it take them so long to shut off her goddamn phone? Her crying broke through enough to mutter,
The pictures?
I would come to find out that her parents thought that her phone had been lost in the accident, despite the fact that I had put it in her purse that night and that she was brought to the hospital. When they retrieved her belongings, the phone was not among them. They intended to contact the phone company at the end of the billing cycle to deactivate the line, but they then received a call informing them of a massive impending charge for hundreds of pictures that have been sent from her phone. Pictures that were all sent to my phone. Pictures that I never got because my phone couldn't receive them. They learned that they were all sent after the night that she died. They deactivated the phone immediately. I tried not to think about the contents of those pictures, but I remember wondering, for some reason, whether I would have been in any of them. My mouth went dry, and I felt the painful sting of despair as I thought the last message I received from her phone. See you again soon.
Yeah, because that was after the one guy sat in the chair next to him.
Okay, we are on the last story, I believe. There might be a little, prelude afterwards, but I believe we are on the last segment. Friends. Are you ready here, Max?
No, one more smoke break.
Okay. It's fine, I'm gonna go piss.
Amogus.
We are on the final part of the story. Let's continue with Friends. On the first day of kindergarten, my mother had elected to drive me to school. We were both nervous, and she wanted to be there with me all the way up to the moment I walked into class. Took me a bit longer to get ready in the morning due to my still mending arm. The cast came up a couple inches past my elbow, which meant I had to cover the entire arm with specially designed latex bag when I showered. The bag was built to pull tight around the opening in order to seal out any water that might otherwise destroy the cast. I had gotten really adept at cinching the bag myself. That morning, however, perhaps due to my excitement or nervousness, I hadn't pulled the strap tight enough, and halfway through the shower I could feel water pooling inside the bag around my fingers. I jumped out and tore the latex shield away, but I could feel that the previously rigid plaster had become soft, absorbing the water. Because there is no way to effectively clean the area between your body and a cast, the dead skin that would have normally fallen away merely sits there. When stirred by moisture like sweat, it emits an odor. And apparently this odor is proportionate to the amount of moisture it introduced, because as soon as I began attempting to dry it, I was struck with a powerful stench of rot. As I continued to frantically rub it with a towel, it began to disintegrate. It was growing increasingly distressed. I had to put as much effort as a child could put into his very first day of school. I had sat with my mom picking out my clothes the night before. I had spent a great deal of time picking out my backpack, and I had come exceedingly excited to show everyone my lunchbox that had the Ninja Turtles on it. I had fallen into my mom's habit of calling these children I hadn't met yet my friends already, but as a condition of my cast worsened, I became deeply upset at the thought that surely I wouldn't be able to apply that label to anyone by the time the day was over. Defeated, I showed my mom. It took 30 minutes to get most of the moisture out while working to preserve the rest of the cast. To adjust the problem of the smell, my mom cut slivers of a bar of soap and slid them down in the cast, and then rubbed the remainder of the soap on the outside in an attempt to cocoon the rancid smell of a more pleasant one. By the time we arrived at school, my classmates were already engaged in their second activity, and I was shoehorned into one of the groups. I wasn't made very clear on what the guidelines of the activity were, and within 5 minutes I had violated the rules so badly that each member of the group complained to the teacher and asked why I had to be in their group. I had brought a marker to school in hopes that I could collect some signatures or drawings on my cast next to my mother's, and I suddenly felt very foolish for having even put the marker in my pocket that morning. Kindergartners had the lunchroom to themselves at my elementary school, but some of the tables were off limits, so I had to sit alone. I was self-consciously picking at the fraying ends of my cast when a kid sat across from me.
I like your lunchbox.
I could tell he was making fun of me. I grew really angry in my mind that the lunchbox was the last good thing about my day. I didn't look up from my arm, and I felt a burning in my eyes from the tears that I was holding back. I looked up to tell the kid to leave me alone, but before I could get to the words out, I saw something that made me pause. He had the exact same lunchbox. I laughed. I like your lunchbox too.
No.
Say it.
I think Michelangelo's the coolest.
He said while mimicking nunchuck moves. I was in the middle of rebutting by saying that Raphael was my favorite when he knocked open his carton of milk off the table onto his lap. I tried very hard to stifle my laughter, and I didn't, since I didn't know him at all, but the struggling look on my face must have struck him as funny because he started laughing. Suddenly I didn't feel so bad about my cast, and thought that this person would hardly notice it now anyway. Just then I thought to try my luck. Hey, do you want to sign my cast? As I pulled out the marker, he asked me how I broke it. I told him that I fell out of a tallest tree in my neighborhood. He seemed impressed. I watched as he laboriously drew his name, and when he was done I asked him what it said. He told me it said, Josh. Josh and I had lunch together every day. and whenever we could, we partnered up for projects. I helped him with his handwriting, and he took the blame when I wrote "fart" on the wall in permanent marker. What a friend! I would come to know other kids, but I think I even knew then that Josh was my only real friend. Moving a friendship outside of school when you were 5 years old is actually more difficult than most remember. The day we launched our balloons and had such a good time that I asked Josh if he wanted to come to my house the next day to play. He said that he did and that he'd bring some of his toys. I said that we could also go exploring and maybe swim in the lake. When I got home, I asked my mom, and she said it would be fine. My enthusiasm was boundless until I realized that I had no way of contacting Josh to tell him. I spent the whole weekend worrying that our friendship would be dissolved by Monday. When I saw him after the weekend, I was relieved to find that he had run into the same obstacle and thought it was funny. Later that week, we both remembered to write down our phone numbers at home and then exchange them at school. I remember having to do that and then get a note for the bus. Shit was terrible. My mom spoke with Josh's dad, and it was decided that my mom would pick up Josh and myself from school that Friday. We alternated this basic structure nearly every weekend. The fact that we lived so close made things much easier on our parents, who seemed to work constantly. When my mom and I moved across the city at the end of the first grade, I was sure that our friendship had seen its last day. As we drove away from the house I had lived in my whole life, I felt a sadness that I knew just wasn't about a house. I was saying goodbye to my friend forever. But Josh and I, to my surprise and delight, stayed close. Despite the fact that we spent the majority of our time apart and only saw one another on weekends, we remained remarkably similar as we grew. Our personalities coalesced, and our senses of humor complemented each other's, and we would often find that we had started liking new things independently. We even sounded enough alike that when I stayed with Josh, he would sometimes call my mom pretending to be me. His success rate was impressive. My mom would sometimes joke that the only way she could tell us apart was by our hair. He had straight, dirty blonde hair like his sister, while I had curly, dark brown hair like my mother. One would think that the thing most likely to drive two young friends apart would be that out of their parents' control, however. I think the catalyst of our gradual disengagement was my insistence that we sneak out to my old house looking for boxes. The next weekend I invited Josh over to my house, in keeping with our tradition of alternating houses, but they said it wasn't really feeling up to it. We started seeing progressively less of each other one of another over the next year or so. It had gone from once a week to once a month to once every couple months. For my 12th birthday, my mom threw a party for me. I hadn't made that many friends since we'd moved, so it wasn't a surprise party since my mom had no idea who to invite. I took the handful of kids I'd become acquainted with and called Josh to see if he wanted to come. Originally, he said that he didn't think he could make it, but the day before the party, he called me to say that he'd be there. I was really excited about it because I hadn't seen him in several months. The party went pretty well. My biggest concern was that Josh and the other kids wouldn't get along, but they seemed to like each other well enough. Josh was surprisingly quiet. He hadn't brought me a gift and apologized for that, but I told him it wasn't a big deal. I was just glad that he was able to make it. I tried to start several conversations with him, but they seemed to keep reaching dead ends. I asked him what was wrong. I told him that I didn't get why things would become so awkward between us. They were never like that before. We used to hang out almost every weekend and talk on the phone every couple of days. I asked him what happened to us. He looked up from staring at his shoes and just said, "You left." My bad. Just after he said that, my mom yelled in from the other room and that it was time to open presents. I forced a smile and walked into the dining room as they sang "Happy Birthday." There were a couple of wrapped boxes and a lot of cards since most of my extended family lived out of state. Most of the gifts were silly and forgettable, but I remember that Brian gave me a Mighty Max toy shaped like a snake that I kept for years afterwards. My mom was insistent that I open all the cards that had been brought and thank each person who had given me one, because several years before on Christmas I had torn through the wrapping paper and envelopes with such fervor I had destroyed any possibility of discerning who had sent which gift or what amount of money. He separated the ones that had sent by mail and the ones that had been brought from that day so my friends wouldn't have to sit through me opening cards from people they had never met. Most of the cards from my friends had a couple dollars in them, and the ones from my family members contained larger bills. One of the envelopes didn't have my name written on it, but it was in the pile, so I opened it. The card had a generic floral pattern on its face, and it seemed to be a card that had been received by someone else who was now recycling it for my birthday because it was a little dingy. I actually appreciated the idea that it was a reused card since I always thought cards were silly. I angled it so that the money wouldn't fall out on the floor when I opened it, but the only thing inside was the message that had come printed in the card. "I love you." Whoever had given me the card hadn't written anything in it, but they had circled the message in a pencil a couple times. I chuckled a little and said, "Gee, thanks for the awesome card, Mom." She looked at me quizzically and then turned her attention to the card. She told me it wasn't from her, And she seemed amused and showed my friends, looking at their faces, trying to discern who had played the joke. None of these kids stepped forward, so my mom said,
Don't worry, sweetheart. At least you know that 2 people love you.
the fuck? She followed that with an extremely prolonged and excruciating kiss on my forehead that transformed the group's bewilderment into hysteria. They were all laughing, so it could have been any of them, but Mike seemed to be laughing the hardest, to become a participant rather than the subject of the gag. I said to him that must be because he had given me that card. He shouldn't think that I'd kiss him later. We all laughed, and as I looked at Josh, I saw he was finally smiling. Well, I think that gift might be the winner, but you have a couple more to open. My mom slid another present in front of me. I was still feeling the tremors because of suppressed chuckles in my abdomen. As I tore the colorful paper away, when I saw the gift, I had no idea to suppress the laughter anymore. Or I had no need to suppress the laughter anymore. My smile dropped and I looked at what I'd been given. It was a pair of walkie-talkies.
Well, go on, show everyone.
Thanks, Mom. I held them up and everyone seemed to approve, but as I drew my attention to Josh, I could see that he had turned a sickly shade of white. We locked eyes for a moment, that he had turned and walked into the kitchen. As I watched him dial the number on a corded phone attached to the wall, my mom whispered into the ear that she knew that Josh and I didn't talk much since one of the walkie-talkies had broken, so she thought I'd like it. I was filled with an intense appreciation for my mom's thoughtfulness, but this feeling was easily overpowered by the emotions resurrected by the returning memories I'd tried so hard to bury. When everyone was eating cake... yeah, well, and I mean, Josh almost getting captured and...
Yeah.
The picture and everything, yeah. When everyone was eating cake, I asked Josh who he had called. He told me he wasn't feeling well, so he called his dad to come get him. I understand that he wanted to leave, but I told him that I wished he could hang out more. I extended one of the walkie-talkies to him, but he put his hand up in refusal. Dejected, I said, "Well, thanks for coming. I hope I'll see you for my next birthday."
I'm sorry. I'll try to call you back more often. I really will,
he said. The conversation stagnated as we waited by my door for his dad. I looked at his face. Josh seemed genuinely remorseful that he hadn't made more of an effort. His mood seemed suddenly bolstered by the idea that had struck him. He told me that he knew what he'd get me for my birthday. It would take a while, but he thought I would really like it. I told him it wasn't a big deal, but he insisted. He seemed in better spirits and apologized for being such a drag at my party. He said that he was tired and that he hadn't been sleeping well. I asked him why that he had opened the doors in response to his dad's honking in the driveway. He turned back toward me and waved goodbye as he answered my question.
I think I've been sleepwalking.
Dun dun dun. That was the last time I saw my friend, and a couple months later he was gone. Over the past several weeks, the relationship between my mother and I has grown increasingly strained due to my attempts to learn the details from my childhood. It is often the case that one cannot know the breaking point of a thing until that thing fractures. And after that last conversation with my mother, I imagine that we will spend the rest of our lives attempting to repair what had taken a lifetime to build. She had put so much effort and energy into keeping me safe, both physically and physiologically. But I think the walls were meant to insulate me from harm while also protecting her emotional stability. As the truth came pouring out the last time we spoke, I could hear a trembling in her voice that I think was reverberation of the collapse of her world. But I don't imagine my mother and I will talk very much anymore. And while there are still some things I don't understand, I think I know enough. After Josh disappeared, his parents had done all that they could to find him. From the very first day, the police had suggested that they contact all of Josh's friends to see if it was them. They did this, of course, but no one had seen him, and they had no idea where he might be. The police had been able to turn over any new information about Josh's whereabouts, despite the fact that they had received several anonymous phone calls from a woman urging them to compare this case with a stalking case that had been opened about 6 years before. If Josh's mother's grip on the world loosened when her son vanished, it broke when Veronica died. She had seen many people die at the hospital, but there's no amount of desensitization that can fortify a person against the death of her own child. She would visit Veronica twice a day, since she was recuperating in a different hospital, once before her shift and once afterward. On the day Veronica died, her mother was late leaving work, and by the time she arrived at her daughter's hospital, Veronica had already passed. This was too much for her, and over the next couple weeks she became increasingly more unstable. She would often wander outside yelling for both Josh and Veronica to come home. There were several times that her husband found her wandering around my old neighborhood in the middle of the night, half-clothed and frantically searching for her son and daughter. Due to his wife's mental deterioration, Josh's dad could no longer travel for work and began taking construction jobs that were a little less well-paying so he could stay closer to home. When they began expanding my old neighborhood more, about 3 months after Veronica died, Josh's dad applied for every position and he was hired. When he was qualified to lead the build sites, but he took a job as a laborer helping to build frames and clean up the sites and whatever else was needed. He even took odd jobs that would occasionally come up, mowing lawns, repairing fences, anything to keep from traveling. They began clearing the woods in the area next to the tributary to transform the lake into an inhabitable property. Josh's dad was tasked with the responsibility of leveling the recently deforested lot, and this job guaranteed him at least several weeks of work. On the third day, he arrived at the spot that he could not level. Each time he'd drive over it, it would remain lower than all the surrounding land. Frustrated, he got off the machine to survey the area. He was tempted to simply pack in more dirt into the depression, but he knew that would only be an aesthetic and temporary solution. He worked into construction for years and knew that the roots systems from large trees that had been recently cut down would often decompose, leaving weaknesses in the soil that would manifest as a weakness in the foundation above. He weighed his option and elected to dig a little with a shovel in case the problem was shallow enough to fix without needing a machine that would have been brought over from another site. And as my mother described where this was, I knew I had seen that spot both before the soil was broken and before it had been filled in. I felt a tightening in my chest. He dug a small hole about 3 feet down until a shovel collided with something hard. He smashed his shovel until repeatedly in an attempt to gauge the thickness of the root and the density of the network. Suddenly, a shovel plunged through the resistance. Confused, he dug the hole even wider. About a half hour of excavating, he found himself standing in on a brown blanket covered box about 7 feet long and 4 feet wide. Our minds work to avoid dissonance. If we hold a belief strongly enough, our minds will forcefully reject conflicting evidence so that we can maintain the integrity of our understanding of the world. Up until the very moment, despite what all sense would have indicated, despite the fact that some small but suffocated part of him understood what was supporting his weight, this man believed he knew his son was still alive. My mom received a call at 6 p.m. She knew who it was, but she couldn't understand what he was saying. But what she did comprehend made her leave immediately. Down here, now, son. Please, God. When she arrived, she found Josh's dad sitting perfectly still with his back to the hole. He was holding the shovel so tightly it seemed that it might snap, and he was staring straight ahead with eyes that looked lifeless as a shark's. He wouldn't respond to any of her words and only reacted when she tried to gently take the shovel from him. He dragged his eyes to hers and just said, "I don't understand." He repeated this as if he had forgotten all other words, and my mother could hear him still muttering as she walked past him to look into the hole. She told me she wished she had gouged her eyes out before she faced downward into that crater, and I told her that I knew that she was about to say, and that she need not continue. I looked at her face and was expressing a look of such intense despair that it caused my stomach to turn. I realized that she had known of this for almost 10 years and was hoping that she'd never have to tell me. As a result, she never came up with a proper arrangement of words to describe what she saw, and as I sit here, I met with the same difficulty of articulation. Josh was dead. His face was sunken in and contorted in such a way that it was as if the misery and hopelessness of all the world had transferred to it. The assaulting smell of decay rose from the crypt, and my mother had to cover her nose and mouth to keep from vomiting. His skin was cracked, almost crocodilian, and a stream of blood that had followed the lines had dried up on his face after pooling and staining the wood around his head. His eyes lay half-lidded, facing straight up. She said by the look of him he had not been long dead, and thus time had not brought the mercy of degradation to erase the pain and terror that was now etched into his face. She said it was as if he had fixed his gaze right on her, his mouth offering an all-too-late plea for help. The rest of his body, however, wasn't visible. Someone else was covering it. He was large and lay face down on top of Josh, and as my mother's mind stretched itself to take in what her eyes were attempting to tell her, she became aware of the significance of the way in which he laid. He was holding Josh. Their legs lay frozen by death, but entangled like vines in some lush tropical forest. One arm rested under Josh's neck, only to wrap around his body so that he might lay closer still. As the sun passed through the trees, its light became reflected by something pinned to Josh's shirt. My mother stooped to one knee and raised the collar of her shirt over her nose that she might block out the smell. When she saw it had caught the sun, her legs abandoned her, and she nearly fell into the tomb. It was a picture. It was a picture of me as a child. She staggered backwards, gasping and trembling, and collided with Josh's father, who still sat facing away from the hole. She understood why he had called her, but she could not bring herself to tell him what she had kept from everyone for all these years. Josh's family never knew about the night that I had woken up in the woods. She knew now that she would have she should have told them, but to tell him now would help nothing. As she sat there resting her back against Josh's dad, he spoke. I can't tell my wife. I can't tell her about our little boy. His speech is staggered as it fits as he pressed his wet face into dirt-caked hands. She couldn't bear it. After a moment, he stood up, still shuddering, and lumbered toward the grave. With a final sob, he stepped down into the coffin. Josh's dad was a big man, but not as big as the man in the box. He grabbed the back of the man's collar and pulled hard. It was as if he intended to throw the man out of the grave in a singular motion, but the collar ripped, and the body fell back down on top of his son. You motherfucker! He grabbed the man by the shoulders and heaved him back until he was off of Josh and sat awkwardly but upright against the wall of the grave. He looked at the man and staggered back a step. Oh God, no, please God, no. In a struggling but powerful moment, he lifted and pushed the corpse completely out of the ground. They both heard the sound of glass rolling against the wood. It was a bottle. He handed it to my mother. It was ether. Oh, Josh, he sobbed, my boy, my baby boy. Why is there so much blood? What did he do to you? As my mother looked at the man who lay now facing upward, she realized she was facing the person who had haunted our lives for over a decade. She had imagined him so many times, always evil and always terrifying. The cries of Josh's father seemed to confirm her worst fears. But as she stared at his face, she thought that it didn't look like who she imagined. This was just a man. As she looked at his frozen expression, it actually looked serene. The corners of his lips were turned up only slightly. She saw that he was smiling. Not the expected smile of a maniac from a film or a horror story, not the smile of a demon or the smile of a fiend. This was a smile of content or satisfaction. It was a smile of bliss. It was a smile of love. As she looked down from his face, she saw a tremendous wound on his neck, from where the skin had been ripped out. She was at first relieved when she realized the blood had not been Josh's. Perhaps he had suffered less. But this comfort was short-lived as she realized just how wrong she was. She brought a hand up to her mouth and whispered, as almost as if she was afraid to remind the world of what happened.
They were alive.
Josh must have bitten the man's neck in an attempt to get free, and although the man had died, Josh couldn't move him. I began crying when I thought how long he might have laid there. She looked through the man's pockets for some kind of identification, but she only found a piece of paper. On it was a drawing of a man holding hands with a small boy, and next to the boy were initials. My initials. I like to think that she was remembering that part of the story inaccurately, but I'll never know for sure. As Josh's father carried his son out of the grave, my mom slid that piece of paper into her pocket. He kept muttering that his son's hair had been dyed. She saw that it had been. It was now dark brown. And she noticed that he was dressed oddly. His clothes were all far too small. After Josh's dad delicately laid his boy on the soft dirt, he began gently pressing his hands over his son's pants to feel his pockets. He heard a crinkle. Carefully, he retrieved a folded piece of paper from Josh's pocket. He looked at it, but was vexed. He handed it to my mother, but she didn't recognize it either. I asked her what it was. She told me it was a map, and I felt my heart shatter. He was finishing the map. That must have been his idea for my birthday present. I found myself strangely hoping that he hadn't been taken while expanding it, as if that would somehow matter now. She heard Josh's father grunt and looked to see him pushing the man's body back into the ground. As he walked back toward the machine that had found the spot for him, he put his hand on the canister of gasoline and paused with his back toward my mother. You should go. I'm so sorry. Oh, wait, that's you.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Sorry.
I did this. It's not your fault. I did this.
You can't think like that. There was nothing.
He interjected flatly, with almost no emotion at all. About a month ago, a guy approached me as I was cleaning up the site on a new development block, a block over. He asked me if I wanted to make some extra money, and because my wife's not working right now, I accepted. He told me that some kids dug a bunch of holes on his property, and he offered me $100 to fill them. He said he wanted to take some pictures for the insurance company first, but I came by after 5 p.m. the next day. That would be fine. I thought this guy was a sucker since I knew clearing with that lot was coming up, so someone would have to do it anyway, but I needed the money, so I agreed. I didn't even think he had $100, but he put the bill in my hand, and I did the job the next day. I've been so exhausted, and I didn't even think about it after it was done. I didn't think about it until today when I pulled the same guy off of my son. He pointed at the grave, and his emotions started to push through as he broke into a sob. He paid me $100 so I would bury him with my boy. It was as if saying it aloud forced him to accept what had happened, and he collapsed onto the ground in tears. My mother could think of nothing to say and stood there in silence for what felt like a lifetime. She finally asked what he would do about Josh. His final resting place won't be here with this monster. As she looked back and reached for her car, or as she reached her car, she could see black smoke billowing and diffusing against the amber sky, and she hoped against all hope that Josh's parents would be okay. I left my mom's house without saying much else. I told her that I loved her and that I would talk to her soon, but I don't know what soon means for us. I got into my car and left. I understood now why the events of my childhood had stopped years ago. As an adult, I now saw the connections that were lost on a child who tends to see the world in snapshots rather than a sequence. I thought about Josh. I loved him then, I love him even still. I miss him more now that I know I'll never see him again, and I find myself wishing that I had hugged him the last time I saw him. I thought about Josh's parents, how much they had lost, and how quickly that loss had come. They don't know about my connection to any of this, but I could never look them in the eyes now. I thought about Veronica. I had only ever really come to know her later in my life, but in those brief few weeks, I really think I loved her. I thought about my mother. She had tried so hard to protect me and was stronger than I ever would be. I tried not to think about the man and what he had done with Josh for more than 2 years. Mostly I thought about Josh. Sometimes I wish he had never sat across from me that day in kindergarten, that I'd never known what it was like to have a real friend. Sometimes I'd like to dream he's in a better place, but that's only a dream and I know that. The world is a cruel place made crueler still by man. There would be no justice for my friend, no final confrontation, no vengeance. It had been over for almost a decade for everyone but me now. I miss you, Josh. I'm sorry you chose me, but I'll always cherish my memories of you. We were explorers, we were adventurers, we were friends. Okay, hello everyone. We are obviously in different clothes, and it's, I think, a different time. Actually, no, I think we did it late. But this is like a week and a half after the recording of Penpal. I am back from my vacation, and we needed to film more of an outro because we did not really discuss it. So here we are now. I have a lot of feelings about the story. It's one of my personal favorites, but I want to let Max elaborate on how he feels. He has a couple points that he said he wanted to bring up. And then we'll just get into it. So go ahead, Max.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, that school is stupid as fuck. It's like, here we go. I'm just gonna do a quick recap. Stupid ass school decides to send names, pictures, and addresses of children into the atmosphere with balloons. And one of the kids starts getting stalked. Eventually, it gets to the point where his mother notices that he's being stalked. Somehow there's no police investigation launched.
Because she
They
never
have
called
proof
them.
of being stalked. Somehow no police investigation launched.
So what also, like I said, the most popular thought, I guess, the community has is that most people would say that it's the mother's fault. Like, majority-wise, besides the school being stupid as shit, it is, like, the mom's fault. If you can suspend your disbelief a little bit of her, like, not calling the cops at any point. Like, it was mostly out of shame, like, I'd feel, and, like, not wanting to, like, she wanted to deal with the problem on her own, and she kept thinking that she did.
By moving away, because, you know, that always helps a stalker. And they didn't even move away. They moved, what, 4 blocks?
Yeah, because you could get to his...
They were able to walk to the old house. It was walking distance.
Well, no, because remember, he said it would have been really far away if they had gone, like, a normal way. The only reason that it was, like, an easy distance to cross was because they went through the woods.
Oh, yeah, never mind, too. I forgot that they were staying at Josh's house, and Josh lived a little bit away. Not
Was it?
him.
Yeah, it was Josh's house. Yeah, because they lived close together. It was his old neighborhood.
At first they lived a few blocks away from each other. And then he moved away, and then they started staying the night at each other's house like every other weekend. They would alternate.
So this just makes me very excited. Max prefaced before we had started this that he wasn't very sure, like, how much of the story he was gonna, like, really retain and, like, how much he would be, like, able to invest. But I'm very glad that you have been able to, like, remember all these, like, smaller key moments and things.
I was just confused about some of the wording and the more more description in the more descriptive scenes. I got
Before
a little lost.
we nitpick other things, what is your like overall thoughts on the story? Like how much did you like it, and like where did you dislike it? Like what were the weaker parts of the story for you, and like what was your take overall?
I wish they would have went over more of the pictures that were taken afterward. Like you said something about how some of them were illustrated in the book, but I wish there was more of a description of like when the one girl died. I can't remember her name. Josh's sister. When she died, he was like, he took my pictures. Like I wanted to see that picture. When Josh was in the house and he said, "Oh, he took my picture," I wanted the description of that picture.
So look, you did get the description of the picture of Veronica, just not like the actual picture. Remember, it in great detail, horrifyingly described what her mangled body looks like. I hated having to read that.
It described her body, but it like before, like I'm gonna assume the picture happened like as she was getting hit, and we didn't see that.
I figured it implied he either took it before he rammed the car from like a distance, or he hit her and then took it after.
So like either way, but we didn't get the description of which one it was.
Yeah, no, I that's fair.
And then like I said, the one with Josh in the house, like it could have said like, this picture was found in like Josh's pocket or like the one time when he found the drawing of a big guy and a little kid, and the kid had Nate's initials next to it.
Was that not the one that he got in his birthday card? Or are you talking about the one that came with the photo?
That one was left in like his pants pocket, I thought, when they started on their raft.
After maps. Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah. Yeah, no.
And, I thought maybe like there could have been like one of the pictures wrapped in that, or something like that, like later on. Like maybe all the pictures were in the coffin with him at the end.
I think that could have been interesting, yeah. No, I do see what you mean. Like the elaboration on the pictures could have been cooler.
Yeah, like they did really good at the beginning, talking about it when he got them from him, when he just kept getting pictures and then he decided to stop looking at them. Then he went back and looked at them and they were all of him.
I don't want to like talk for the author. I would assume that would be just for the sake of build-up almost. Like we went over like a good amount of these at the beginning. I don't want it to drag near the end. Like because the story, I think that's one of my favorite things about the story. But while it is like weirdly structured, it does have pretty good pacing. And like it has very good moments like where you're like wanting to read faster and like it's really picking up. And then it has those moments of even levity where like we're laughing while we're reading the lines. Like I mean it's a story of nostalgia and children, but it was really fun reading like the lines between them talking over the radio and him being like, "Oh hey man, I found all your magazines with dudes' butts in here. You know, what the hell's that about?"
That's something we would say to each other when we were 10. I think they were 10 at the time.
That's the thing we would say to each other now. But it was very good dialogue and very realistic in the world building and stuff. And I think that's why it's able to do some of the more ridiculous things that it does.
I was trying to speculate the year. I was thinking like
I'm
maybe
gonna say
like
70s.
Late. Well, that's the thing. They didn't have picture phones in the 70s. So I was thinking 90s, like early 90s.
Yeah. It had to have been, because it couldn't have been like smartphones or anything. That probably would have basically
No, it's probably
killed us.
Flip phones had cameras out like too. I'm gonna look up when the first camera phone came out. Because it was brand new. The camera phone that she had was brand new, so this will give us around a year when it was when it came out.
Oh, while you're looking that up, I had a quick nitpick. It wasn't even in that story. It's actually in the book. there's this weird tangent that they go on, like it's an addition in the book during the Veronica scene. I feel like the entire like section of Veronica's story, I feel like that's pretty well paced. Like even like I see a lot of people say like it's a very heartbreaking thing to read, even though you literally meet her in like those contained like 5 paragraphs or however many it is. You meet her in those paragraphs and then you never really talk about her again. And a lot of people found that to be like one of the more heartbreaking parts of the story, and like it's really effective because the guy's really well at writing it, or really good at writing it. But
I'll say this too: if I was Josh's dad,
I would have said, "Get
I'm
the fuck away
shooting
from my
up
family."
that school. I'm not killing any kids.
Oh,
just the teachers.
Oh, okay, great, good stipulation. But
it all started with that. If it wasn't for that program,
okay, it's kind of the school. I feel
son
like I
and
would
daughter
take my
wouldn't be
anger.
dead.
I feel like I would take my anger out more on the mom. She knew this whole time. She could, like, especially after Veronica died, or after Josh went fucking missing before she died. She could have been like, "Hey, there's something kind of, you know,
fishy going around with my son. I don't know. Maybe we should put him in witness protection." Because I looked this up.
Oops.
June 11th, 1997.
97 is when the first camera phone.
First camera phone.
Yeah. So I mean, it had to be either
So I'm gonna
late 90s or early 2000s.
assume that like he was in his 20s in like the 2010s. Is
Probably.
when like the story was written.
I would say so. Yeah, no. So during the Veronica thing, before he goes piss and like she gets hit, they decide to take a detour and like go to the mall, because I got worried when we were reading the creepypasta. I saw him mention the mall and I was like, fuck. I was like, there's no way that they added it into this story, but then they rushed over. I was like, thank God. But they go to the mall and like it's just to add more to their relationship. But like to what I was saying a minute ago, I feel like he already established it well enough to not really need more, and it just felt like overkill at that point. But basically they go into the mall, they walk around a little bit. It's like an old abandoned mall. He's like, oh, did you hear the story of the monster in the sewer grate? And she was like, no, like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so he tells this like you know, supernatural scary story, and it's just to scare her. He ends up like jumping at her and scaring her, and they laugh, and that's it. But it's such a long segment, and like the monster story itself goes like into way too much detail. It sounded like he was kind of like testing the waters for like another creepypasta or something almost. Because it was way too descriptive for it to just be like, you know, a one-off, like, oh, there was a haunted monster in the mall and it killed people. Like it like described its lair and like what the way the monster looked in like great detail, and like the legend of how it came there. And it came out of nowhere, and it was so disconnected from everything else, and like I don't know, it really bothered me. But that's just a nitpick from the book. I just wanted to get that out there.
Well, I didn't read the book, so that
I
means
know.
nothing to me.
But, I mean, I figured you would think that would be a pretty weird tangent to add anyway, because they don't really bring up much else supernatural or reference anything supernatural throughout the entire story. But that was, like, the only supernatural part, and it just felt very out of place, even though it was just, like, a joke. But like I said, it would have worked better if it wasn't so descriptive.
Yeah.
But
It just turns into a different story.
yeah, exactly. That's what it felt like. I really, really love the ending of this story, though. I mean, it's sickening. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not a happy ending at all. But, like, the way it's just described, I mean, it leaves, like, it gives you a pit in your stomach. Because, like, I mean, the feeling, like, I'm trying to imagine what a dad could even feel in that moment, or a parent in general could feel about, like, looking at this thing, not even person, that seemingly
I'm wondering
terrorized
what
your
Josh
son.
told his parents.
It doesn't seem like anything. I mean, he was
It doesn't seem
terrified.
like he told them anything.
Okay, and so that's why a lot of people don't really blame Nate or Josh. They were kids. Nate even specified 100 times over. He thought he was going to get in trouble. He thought he was going to get in trouble when he showed his mom the photos. He was like, "I'm sorry, I did something wrong. Like, please don't yell at me." And then he thought like his mom was calling the cops on him. Oh wait,
Yeah.
there is that too. Remember when he showed her the photos? She was like, "I'm calling the police."
Yeah.
And then they didn't mention anything else of it. I don't know. That's weird.
The murderer was working with the police the whole time.
Dun dun dun. Yeah, no. What was it? In Creepcast, when I watched that, it was funny. Meat Canyon, he was like absolutely sure for a while that the dad of like Nate was the stalker. I thought that could have been an interesting idea. Like, he was never brought up once, though, at all. I don't even think in passing. Maybe there was, like, a single one-off line. I feel like that almost could have been more interesting, though, if he was, like, his dad or something, like, related to him, and that's why he's, like, so hell-bent on this random child. But then again, I guess that takes away the
factor.
It takes away the creep factor, but also
random dude, just this random letter I found with a picture of a child. I want that.
Could you imagine? I guess yeah. Could you imagine how stupid that would be if it was the other way around? It's just this this random balloon just so happens to land in front of his dad, that abandoned him. Like, yeah, okay, I talked myself out of that, but no, we gotta. Look, so they did the same thing in Creepcast. They started out with Penpal and a couple other like really popular stories that are like really good, that are like renowned for being like solid stories. So I think maybe we should do the opposite. We already gave ourselves a pretty good start. I think the next one we should do is probably Jeff the Killer. And we can really see the difference in writing. Because, I mean, I assume the last time that you saw it was 10, 15 years ago. Old ass.
Probably.
Yeah. I think that's going to be really fun to read. Do you have any closing statements to give on the story for Penpal or anything for Dathan Oberok?
There was something else I was thinking.
I was trying to look for a funny prop to pull up. I was gonna stand up, but then I forgot my peanuts was out.
The fact that this man just ran down a teenage girl because he was jealous is kind of crazy.
We've all been there. I've hit Hannah with a car a few times.
And then, like, I'm just wondering, like, I kind of wish we knew what was going on the 2 years that Josh was missing and I guess kept alive.
I like it being more ambiguous. Well, I mean, I don't like it. Like, I think it's more effective, it being more ambiguous, because it makes it that much more horrifying. Like, what... Like, I mean, obviously, like, there is an idea of probably what he did, but, like, to what extent? Because he already did, like, just knowing the way that he killed Josh, or, like, ended up killing Josh, how horrifying that was in its own, alludes to just, like, how horrifying of acts he could have committed prior, and, like, what he did to push a child to that.
He had Josh captured while he was still stalking Nate. That's
well,
what
yeah,
I was
I'm
thinking,
sure. I'm sure that was like,
so, like,
this is my contingency. This is if I can't have him, I'll get the next best thing.
So it's like he comes back to the lair that he has Josh in. Just he failed at getting Nate, and he just starts unbuttoning his pants in front of Josh. It's like, please no.
Jesus Christ.
I've never wished for my friend to get captured in my life. And here's the thing, too. If he would have captured Nate, would he just have done it with both of them? Would he just, like, killed himself with both kids?
No. I think
Would he just let Josh go?
I think he would have either just killed Josh or just left him to die. I definitely don't think he would have brought him with him.
Gotcha.
Like, I mean, it was all about Nate. I mean, even at the end, like, it was still always about him. And that's the thing. That's, like, the dad realized that there had to be some connection, because he saw, like, that's why he called the mom in the first place. He saw the initials. He saw the hair. I mean, he saw he was made to look exactly like Nate. So, I don't know. It all goes back to that. I'm a strong believer that it's mostly the mom's fault. If she
would have pursued it more.
Not even pursued it more. She wouldn't have been such a coward about having a conversation with anyone, with Josh's parents, with the police, with Nate even. A lot of it could have been avoided. Like, I mean, talking to him about
at the very beginning when he woke up in the middle of the woods. My question is,
okay,
the guy got him all the way out to the middle of the woods. How did he not have him captured? What happened?
Presumably he was going back to get tools, because remember that there was already the hole in the ground.
Gotcha.
So I just assume he was probably going to get tools to, like, you know... Or wait, no, there wasn't... There was no hole in the ground. That's why. I think that's why he was going to get the tools. He was laying on the pool floaty. The pool floaty was laying where the hole was going to go. But he was there, and he wasn't expecting him to wake up, I guess, that quick or something.
Because isn't when they went back through the woods and they saw the pool floaty, there was also...
That's when they found the hole. Yeah. That's, like, it was exactly where he had been laying. Unless that's just implying that he woke up and was laying in the hole, and he just didn't really notice it as a kid. That might be what it's saying. You got anything else there to add, Max?
No, I think that was all I was thinking, is like what he was doing with Josh every time.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting question to ponder.
I'm just wondering what happened to Josh's mom. She already went crazy after her daughter.
She was... Well, I think after 2 years of your kid missing, you would probably assume he's dead. Hell, after a couple, 6 months after your kid's missing, I would probably assume he's dead. So up to a year. But yeah, I mean, what did they say he was doing?
His
she was out in the
friend
streets.
was missing for 2 years, and
he didn't know shit
about it.
Well, his mom didn't tell him. She knew. His mom didn't tell him.
Oh, gotcha.
But, because he said something in passing about it at the very end of the story. And he was like, "That's one of the reasons, why I haven't talked to my mother, because he had been missing already. But then also she had known that Josh was dead for." He would have been 2 years. He would have been 16. So, and he was 20 something. So, I mean, 7 years, give or take. 5 to 7 years older. And she kept it a secret that Josh was fucking buried with the Penpal.
With the guy he lured to him using a balloon and an envelope.
Also, what a fucking just ominous name, too. I love that. The Penpal. I know if it was made into a movie, it would be fucking ruined. But I would still love to see it adapted into some form of larger media.
I would love a comic book of it.
That would be, yeah, that would be cool.
Just panels of it, of the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show though how well some of these writers are as far as descriptiveness goes. He really painted a picture a lot of the times. And I mean, I'm sure it helps that he was probably banking on a lot of people having at least similar childhood experiences to some extent. So that helps you visualize it. But, I mean, that's smart. And so, yeah.
Nate was his primary target. Why did he even go for Josh anyway? Even, as a backup? Why would he even waste energy?
No, because Josh looked so similar. He said, fuck, I mean... I can do this. He'd been pursuing Nate for 10 years at that point, so he's like, I want to settle down.
It was it happened, He started getting stalked at like 5 or 6 years old because it was kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Josh ended up getting kidnapped when they were 13 because he was missing for 2 years, and by
14,
the time
because then he
was
would have.
15.
Or oh wait, yeah, he was 15 because he couldn't drive. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's definitely some holes, but overall, I think.
Then again, if there was any logic being used, it wouldn't be very scary.
Yeah, that's true. Well, to some extent, because I think that's what plays well with it. It's a little ridiculous, but it's real enough to invoke that like fear of real. And I'm sure if you had a kid, the story would be 100 times more terrifying to envision what that would feel like. But yeah, I mean, well, at the end of the day, logic is horror's worst enemy.
I want to be scared. I'm sending my kid around with a Glock. 12
There
years
you
old.
go.
America!
Max advocates for children with Glocks. Alright, thank you everyone. We will see you guys soon for another one. Probably Jeff the Killer, or hopefully I dared my best friend to ruin my life. Well, thank you.
I dared my best friend to lube up my butthole.
Well, that's something we can do off camera.